What's up, everybody? Good morning. Thursday. I don't know if we've ever done a Thursday morning video, but here we are. We are going to watch Charlie Adelson's testimony in his own defense together and give our reactions, see what happens, see how he does. And in cases like this, it's particularly interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on the screen so that everybody knows we are, in fact, we have it up and ready to go. Let's do it like this for now. There we go. All right. So that we can see we have it up and we are ready whenever they go live in the courtroom. I heard things like 8:45, 9 o'clock. Sometimes things happen in the morning. A frequently asked question from a lot of people when Charlie Adelson said he will testify was, can he change his mind? And the answer is yes. They wouldn't like that, but the ultimate right at play here is Charlie Adelson's Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. So if he decides, actually, I don't want to testify, the judge would never force him to. The state would never force him to. They would just keep moving on. He also mentioned, if you watched the end of court yesterday, the judge said, if anything changes, let the prosecutors know. So that would be a surprise if he changed his mind, but it is possible, legally speaking, that he would not testify this morning, although I don't expect that at all. What I do expect is Charlie Adelson to take the stand, and I expect for there to be some surprises, some things that we don't know about, that the state doesn't know about, that law enforcement doesn't know about, because if you remember Charlie Adelson's opening, or his defense attorney's opening statement, we have some information that the law enforcement didn't know. We have information the state did not know until today. And the state, through a lot of their questioning, is, when's the first time you heard of this, Wendy? That was today with everybody else, right? No one's ever told law enforcement this entire theory the whole time. So some people are saying they're not familiar with this case. So this case, the victim in this case is Dan Markell, who was one of my law professors at Florida State. He was a criminal law expert. He and his wife went through a nasty divorce, and her family, specifically her brother, has been accused of hiring a hitman to take him out. The hit was successful, unfortunately. The triggermen have been convicted, and one of the connecting pieces, Catherine McBonua, who is believed to have put the hit out and actually specifically spoken to the triggerman, has been convicted after being tried twice. The first was a hung jury. And his connection to the family is she used to date, or her connection to the family, she used to date Charlie Adelson, Wendy Adelson's brother, and the victim's brother-in-law. Nicole is starting us off right, gifting 20 memberships. It's wild. Wild. All right, so sound is on. So we will leave it like that. When it actually starts popping, we will be quiet and listen. But when I say be quiet, everybody that's here should know by now, the point of watching it here is for me to pause, answer questions, give my comments, give my thoughts, not to just listen to it straight with no interruption. So I want everybody to know that off the top. Some people may be frustrated by that. I totally understand. And maybe it's not the right place to watch it, because here we are going to discuss his testimony as it's happening, discuss his cross-examination, discuss what I expect to happen. And a lot of people have asked about, do we expect to hear a lot of these tapes? Will the defense use a lot of these tapes? Hold on one second. Yes. And also, Nicole, my staff reminded me to thank you for the gift cards you sent for their Halloween costumes. I gave them to them yesterday, so that was awesome of you. But I expect for the recordings and the transcripts, I don't expect the defense to go through them at length with Charlie Adelson. I think too many of them are hard to explain or are going to make us give side eye. I'm wondering how many times we're going to be like, I mean, if you want to try to trick people, you could try to say that, but it doesn't actually seem legitimate. You have to be careful about doing that in front of a jury, making them think you think they're stupid or you can pull one over. You don't want to do that, but you have to deal with them. And I think maybe you pull some that fit your theory perfectly, that this was a double extortion, or extortion turned, FBI extortion, and that Kate Magbanua and the Triggermen were behind it the whole time and working over Charlie. You have to deal with Charlie seemingly being nice to Kate Magbanua, which I think is easily explainable. Like, I had to play nice so that she, wouldn't hurt anybody else in my family, or wouldn't try to pin it on me. And I think that's plausible. We'll see how he answers those questions. And I'll give my thoughts kind of throughout, and I'll save it. I'm sure there's going to be a break before cross. I've got a lot of thoughts on how I'd cross Charlie Adelson. So hit that like button if you guys haven't already. Let anybody know if they want to come watch it with us. If they've been watching it anywhere else, come over here, hang out with us for a while. If not, watch it somewhere else. That's good. We're going to try to put something together or cut this up for the people that just like an hour recap to post tonight. It'll probably come from this video, cut it up with the highlights, the high points, so you can watch on your time.
My assistant has told me that you all are making good progress on the snacks that we've provided to you. It's been a long trial, so you are entitled. Is the defense ready to call its next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Charlie Adelson.
And he looks at the jury to see what their reaction is to that immediately. He looks nervous. How could he not be?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do, sir.
You may take your seat. Please speak loudly and clearly.
Charlie, let's start with the most important question. Did you cause the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no.
Did you hire anyone to kill him?
No.
Did you put any letters in any diaper bags of Katie Magbanua to have Professor Markel killed?
No.
Before we get there, let's spend some time on your background.
Always start with the background so they get to know him, maybe feel bad for him, give him a little bit of sympathy. But starting out with a jump, that's not surprising. We've seen it in other cases that we watch where the defendant testifies. The jury wants to hear them say he didn't do it. That's one of the main reasons you call them, is they have to see you up there and judge your credibility and hear you say, I did not do it.
How old are you?
I'm 47 years old.
Where were you raised?
I was raised in Coral Springs, Florida.
When were you arrested in this case?
I was arrested April 21st, 2022.
And by the way, how do you feel right now?
I'm really nervous.
Why are you nervous?
My whole life depends on it.
That's a pure sympathy statement. And frankly, it's obvious, but in some cases they would object to that. Whitney, I'm not sure how long it's, I didn't hear them say a block of time. I would guess the defense hopes it's over by lunchtime, but we'll see how long the cross can take. You never know, because it's a prosecutor's dream to cross the defendant.
Where have you been living since you were arrested a year and a half ago?
Leon County Jail.
Growing up, what was your family like?
It was pretty normal.
Again, sometimes defendants don't want the jury to know they've been in jail. That's why they dress in street clothes and not in their prison uniform. But for sympathy, or when you're saying you're innocent and didn't do it, and you've been sitting in jail, jury could feel bad for you, or feel like maybe you've already paid part of your crime if you were shady but didn't actually do it in this situation. I think this is all strategic.
I was in the middle of 3 children. My dad was a dentist. My mom was a school teacher. Played a lot of sports. Pretty normal upbringing.
Do you have a brother and a sister?
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
How close were you with your siblings growing up?
My brother, I wasn't real close with. My sister, I wasn't really that close with either, probably until I got into high school. And we were probably closer in age and had more in common. And then I got closer to her as the years went on.
Your family growing up, would you describe it? How would you describe it financially?
I'd say it was upper middle class. And then in 92, my dad lost a lot of money, and then wasn't upper middle class after that. And then my dad worked hard, and he worked until he was 78. He retired.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to public school in Coral Springs. I attended Terravella High School.
Was school easy for you?
Again, the money stuff. I wasn't this rich jerk all along paying people to do stuff my whole life. I'm not some trust fund baby. That's why they want to get that out. You got to think as you're watching this, think, why are they asking these questions? There's a reason for every question and answer because the defense prepared this to work into their theory and against the state's theory.
Not really. I mean, I had to work really hard to get good grades, and I really didn't get good grades until I went to college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to UCF in Orlando.
And after graduating from college, what did you do next?
I went to dental school.
Where did you go to dental school?
I went to dental school at Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale.
After dental school, what did you do?
I did a residency in periodontics, and I did that at Nova Southeastern also.
Briefly, what is periodontics?
Periodontics is the surgery of the gums and bone, and it's 3 more years after dental school.
During your residency, did you work?
I did. I'd moonlight and I'd work nights and weekends as a general.
Because he's a hard worker. He does his best. He wants to help people. He's a doctor. Doctors help people. That's what they're trying to get across.
Dentist.
When your residency ended, what was your financial situation?
I had about $200,000 in student loans.
Now, after graduating from your residency, what did you decide you were going to do?
I started basically moonlighting when I was in dental school, and then when I got out, I really didn't have money to start a business. So I started working for just individual dentists, where I'd come in and do the surgery for them in-house, so they wouldn't have to send the work out, but the patients could still be seen by a specialist. So I traveled from office to office.
When you started, and I think, when did you graduate your residency?
Graduated my residency in 2006.
When you started, how many offices did you travel to?
When I first started, it was just the first office that I was moonlighting in when I was in my residency. And then through an assistant that worked there, she introduced me to a couple offices, and then those offices introduced me to more people, and it grew from there. By the end of the first year, I was probably working in, I would say, 6 or 8 offices.
By the time frame of 2014, when Professor Markel was murdered, how many offices were you working in, approximately?
Between 30 and 35 offices. I would
Wow.
come in to.
It's a lot of offices.
When you graduated, where did you live?
When I graduated Perio, I lived in an apartment across the street from school, and then I bought my house. I still lived in 16 years or 20 years later after that.
And that house is where?
On Whale Harbor. I moved in there in 2006.
Now, during this time frame of 2014, can you describe for the jury how far you would travel? In other words, how far were the offices apart from one another?
I never turned any work down. So I had an office as far south as Cutler Ridge, which is a little bit north of Homestead. It's a good hour and a half south of Fort Lauderdale. And then my furthest office I went to north was in East Port St. Lucie, which is...
He's a hard worker. He doesn't turn work down.
It's north of Fort Lauderdale.
Port St. Lucie is probably about halfway between Miami and Orlando. Is that fair to say, or closer to Orlando?
I'd say it's probably closer to Orlando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, your typical work week, what did it look like?
I would work in usually 2 offices a day. I would start around 8 or 9 o'clock, work in one office till about 1 o'clock, and then I'd go to another office and I'd piggyback, and I'd try to be in another office that was in the same vicinity as the first office, and I'd just usually start there around 1:30. I'd have it where it's only a 5 or 10 minute drive to the second office. I would tell them I could stay as late as you need. And then when people had emergencies, which when you work in 30 offices, there's always someone that has an issue. I would come into their office. I would just say, just have an assistant stay. And when I got done with that second office, if it was 8:00, 8:30, I would still go in and I'd work in the third office. So
Because he's such a hard worker. People are asking me to adjust my mic volume. I turned it down. Hopefully that works. I can turn it down a little bit more if people need that, but doing my best.
it was almost 2 offices on most days. And I would say 20% and 30% of the time there was a third office.
How many days a week did you work? And again, we're talking about the 2014 time frame.
I was working 6 days a week, and then I was still working 6 days a week.
Now,
And sometimes every once in a while there'd be a big case, and my whole week was booked up, and the patient needed something, and it was hours, and I didn't have time, so an office would open up on Sunday, and I would go in on Sunday and do the work.
for the most part, in your job working in these offices, what form of payment were you paid mostly in? Was it cash or some other form of payment?
The offices would always pay me an office check.
Now, were you ever paid in cash from these offices?
I wasn't paid from the offices that I work for in cash, but if I was doing a work on like one of the assistants in the office or a friend of the dentist, and the dentist didn't want any money to come to him, and I was doing it as a favor, I would say, just go ahead and pay me in cash for the materials. And then the materials were expensive. Sometimes they were hundreds, sometimes it was $1,000. And then but the dentist didn't want to take any of the money from that person. So he was like, I'm removing myself from the situation. So the person would pay me the cash just for the materials for the work that I did on them. And that was really just when I was doing favors, and it wasn't
Every time you explain cash transactions and these types of situations, it always sounds a little shady. So this is just like the beginning, if I'm the state, of making him look shady throughout the process.
it was sporadic, sometimes more than other, depends on the month.
By the way, backtracking a little bit, growing up, what profession was your dad in?
My dad was a general dentist.
And did your mom work growing up?
He already answered
When you grew
this, but he must not have been listening. He already answered school teacher and general dentist.
She was when she had 3 kids, and she still worked as a substitute teacher, where she would come in sporadically, but she wasn't working full time after she had the 3 of us.
Did there come a time where she worked in your dad's dental practice?
Yeah, I would say probably after the kids went to college, or maybe probably towards the end of high school, college. My mom came in and was doing front desk work and helping my dad out.
And what other roles did she have in the office?
She did the bookkeeping. She helped me with all my financial stuff as far as like paying insurances, making stuff with anything that was due at a certain time, licenses. She paid salaries at the office, and then also did front desk with Erica.
All right. Let's talk about the Adelson Institute. When you became this traveling periodontist, were one of the places that you traveled to your dad's dental practice?
Yes.
How often did you work at the Adelson Institute?
I would work at my dad's office, I would say every 4 to 6 weeks. And I would piggyback it. There was another office that I worked at every 2 weeks that was in the same plaza as my dad's. So I would finish there usually about 4 o'clock, and then I'd go into my office, and then I'd start working there at 4:15, and I'd stay as late as I needed to. 10, 11 o'clock.
Do you remember what the full name of the practice was called?
Well, originally, or when we changed it to.
Well, let's start with what you changed it to.
Okay. Well, when I graduated my residency in periodontics, I thought, since I was joining my dad's practice and it was now going to have a periodontist there, I thought we'd rename the practice and give it a fancy name. So we called it we copyrighted the Adelson Institute for Implants and Aesthetic Dentistry.
Okay. Now, growing up, did it have that name?
No.
It was just a plain old dental practice, right?
Yeah, it was just my dad and his 3 employees.
How many people worked at the Adelson Institute?
There was Erica Johnson, Clarissa. Erica was the front desk. Clarissa was my dad's assistant since 1979 until he retired 2 years ago. And then Amy was the hygienist. And then my mom when she would be there.
And your mom controlled the checkbook?
Yeah, she handled that stuff.
Who did all the billing for the practice?
My mom and Erica did the billing.
How many dentists were in the practice?
Just one dentist, just my dad.
Did there come a time when you bought the practice from your dad?
Yeah, my dad was going to sell the practice, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to buy it, and I thought maybe I'd run it and it would be something that I would always have. But I didn't like the idea of it being sold, so I bought it from my dad when he wanted to slow down in 2012.
During the time period of 2014, who owned the practice?
In 2014, I was the owner of the practice.
Okay.
So somebody asked here, EB, what's the relevance of these questions? To get the background, who he is, where he was at the time, that he's not some rich, spoiled kid. He had loans he took out. He worked really hard. He drove all over the place. He wasn't handed this money. He wasn't just somebody who's going to throw $1 million around. His dad lost all his money, so he learned he doesn't want to lose all his money. They're setting it all up. It's very different than if it's, some trust fund kid who could throw $1 million here, $1 million there. He's used to just paying for what he wants. That's not Charlie Adelson. That's what they're trying to set it up as. Nina, I think Wendy is not there by design. I think their strategy is to not seem too interconnected as the Adelson family. And it probably is better that she's not there because it doesn't seem like they're all working together to try to get off.
Now, during the time frame of the wires in 2016, who owned the practice?
I had sold it back to my dad in 2015.
Why did you sell it back to your dad?
Because I didn't have any time to run it. And even though I bought it, nothing had changed. My dad was still the same dentist that was there. My mom was still the same person doing the books, and they were spending all their time running it. And I was so busy with my traveling periodontics, I didn't have time to dedicate to it, and it really wasn't financially, it wasn't feasible, and there wasn't a benefit.
I want to talk about cash a little bit. Do you like to collect cash?
I always have, yes.
Why?
I like it probably goes back to when I was a kid. I mean, I get $1 a week allowance, and I would save it up, and I just like the feeling of looking at it. I'd rather look at it than put it in the bank. So whenever I had cash, I always saved it up.
Now,
I just like looking at it. It's kind of makes me side eye a little bit.
were there several ways that you accumulated cash?
Yes, there was.
Did you have a real estate business, or some real estate in 2014?
Thank you, Tracy.
14, yes.
Okay. And would you accumulate cash through this business?
There was some cash that came in through that, yes.
Did you rent out dock space behind your house?
Yeah, I rented out my dock space behind my house since 2006, and it's been rented ever since.
And how would you be paid for that dock space?
The guy would come down once a year, and he would pay me in cash for the year.
Were there other ways that you would accumulate cash over the years?
From whenever I did work on someone as a favor, and they were just paying me for the materials, I got paid in cash on that. And probably the biggest source of cash through the years is every time I went out, every chance I could, I used my credit card to build up the airline miles, and I'd always pay the tab, and whoever was there would just give me the cash, and it added up over the years. I've done that 20 years.
And once you had this cash, what would you do with it?
Whenever I had $1,000, I would have staple it, and it was a packet. So and it was really, I stapled it because it was just being saved. I wasn't spending it. I was always using my credit card, so the cash built up.
Where would you put the cash?
I put it in my safe.
When you, I'm going to go back to your business.
It's kind of hard to not sound a certain way when you do that, like you're stapling cash and stacking it in the safe and you like looking at it. It's just a little weirder than I think your average everyday person, but it doesn't make him a criminal in and of itself. And you have to explain a lot of this stuff. When the defendant takes the stand, he has a lot of explaining to do, like Lucy, a lot of explaining to do. So you've got to hit all the points you think may seem weird. You got to give explanations. You got to give answers. And that's what I think they're doing now. And Edmo, I think they are trying to, make him seem like this. I really do. I think you're spot on.
Business a little bit. When you started your business, did you make a lot of money the first couple of years?
No. I mean, it took off pretty quick, but it wasn't where it was in 13, 14, or 15.
By 2011, approximately, how much money were you making?
I was probably making $350 a year.
And what did your income look like in the 2014 range?
14, I made between, I think, around 850 to 900,000.
What were your best years financially?
13, 14, and 15.
Have you ever been married?
No.
In the time frame of 2013, 14, did you have any kids?
Back then, I didn't have my son.
During this 2013, 2014 time frame, how would you succinctly describe your lifestyle?
Work came first. I, worked my whole life to get to where I was. So I wasn't turning any work down, and I was single. So I worked. I'd go to the gym late at night, and I'd probably go out one night a week, usually on a Saturday night is when I'd go out.
So a bachelor, but again, you want to make him sound like a respectful bachelor. Guy's making $900,000 a year with no kids, no wife. He'd go to the gym, he'd work, and he'd go out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Depending on how much they try to downplay it, like only one night a week, I would never go out. It's just a Saturday night, very normal.
Now, do you have any children now?
Yeah, I've got one son.
How old?
5.
I want to talk to you about your relationship with your parents as an adult.
Obviously, this is relevant to this case.
Fair to say you're close with your mom and dad?
Yes.
As an adult, how often would you talk with your mom and dad?
I would talk to my mom more often, a lot more often, just because my dad was always working. But I talk to my mom every day.
I don't know any dentist that's always working, and we've got 2 in this family that are always working. I thought one of the great parts about dentists, and all of my friends that are dentists, I have multiple in different states, they work like 4 days a week. Some of them tell me by Sunday they are ready to go back to work because they've had 3 days off. So just to make it seem like these guys are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as dentists, is just driving. I get it. He's driving 2 hours a day. That's a lot of, quote unquote work, but just, you got to be careful how thick you lay it on here.
Once a day or multiple times?
At least once a day, but most likely probably twice a day, because there was always usually one thing was a personal thing and one thing was something having to do with the office or scheduling or something like that.
During the 2014 timeframe when you owned the office, did your mom work for you?
You could say that. Yeah.
Did she control the books?
She
We've
wrote
gone
the
over
check.
this
Yeah,
5
they
times
had
already.
the checkbook at the house.
Now, was there any particular time that you would talk to your mom more often than other times?
Yeah, in the morning driving into work, I'd call my mom, and usually on the way home from work, I'd call them. Just depends on how long the drive was. Really.
How involved was your mom in your life?
Business-wise, very involved. because she was running the office. Personal wise, I mean, I would tell them things and keep them up to date with stuff and my life, but it was my life. I mean, I did whatever I wanted to do.
We're going to get to this later, but how involved was your mom in your sister's life?
I think she was more involved. And I think my sister involved my mom maybe more. And it just depends on different issues.
You also have to be careful when the state uses something as their theory, like your parents or your family so involved in your life, you're this close-knit family, and they're using it as a bad thing. Sometimes you can flip that and make it a good thing, but if you try to act like you're not, when it's very clear you are, this family's never going to say they were not involved in each other's lives and kind of close-knit around this time period, at least. And families come together during tragedy and during divorce and things like that, so it's not abnormal, and you have to really be careful about how much you push against that.
I want to talk a little bit about your sister, Wendy. As adults, before she married Professor Markel, how often would you talk with her?
I'd call my sister, say about every 10 days or so. I'd call her, but she was busy and she wasn't really good with the phone. So I would call her and she would always take a day or two to call me back. I spoke to her half the time when I called. Half the time she didn't pick up.
How often would you see her? Again, pre-marriage. How often would you see your sister?
Not a lot. In 1995, I left to go to college. In 97, she left to go to college up in Boston. So it was pretty much, I would say, holidays, like every 3-4 months. Thanksgiving, Christmas time, sometimes during the summer. So maybe 3-4 times a year us here.
There came a time when Wendy started dating Professor Markel, right?
Yes.
Do you remember when you first met him?
I do. I think he was in town, and I remember all of us going out to lunch. I think we went to a deli.
What did you think of him?
I thought he was a nice guy. I mean, he kind of seemed like all my other sister's boyfriends she's had in the past. I've never really had much in common with them. And she kind of seemed like the rest of them, but that was pretty much it.
Now, after they got married, what was your relationship like with Professor Markel?
It was the same as before they got married. I mean, we texted each other on our birthdays. I don't think we ever really called each other or hung out. I mean, I would just see him when he came over to the house with my sister.
And how often would you see him and your sister?
I would say twice a year, maybe, or roughly around there, maybe 3 times a year.
In the years that Professor Markel and your sister were married and living in Tallahassee, how often did you come to Tallahassee?
I'd only been to Tallahassee. I was there twice, I believe, when her children were born. And then once when I was working in Alabama, I had a research fellowship, and I was passing through Tallahassee. I spent the night with them, and I saw that time too.
When Professor Markel and your sister were married, did you still communicate with your sister about the same amount of time?
It may have been a little less, because I remember when she had kids, I mean, she had even less time. So I probably spoke to her. I'd call her, and then probably more times than not, she didn't pick up the phone. And then I'd get a call back a couple days later. So it was pretty similar.
Did there come a time when you became aware that Wendy and Professor Markel were having marital issues?
Yes.
What did you learn?
I took my sister out to dinner when she had come to town, and we went to the Melting Pot. And I remember her telling me that they were having issues, and it was pretty serious. Did
she tell you that they were going through marriage counseling?
Yeah, that's when I found out. And I guess that's what I was going to say, is like, if you tried to work things out. And that's when I found out that they had been in counseling for 6 months. I didn't know about it before.
So again, now is where he starts to get involved, and they've got to be careful about how much he's going to get involved and how much Wendy complained and how bad was it when Wendy talked about it. Lita, yes, the cash for dinner came right after, I believe, she got that $5,000 demand from the undercover agent in the bump. So I do believe cash was not for dinner.
Now, what were some of the issues, if you remember, that she told you they were having?
He was becoming very, very religious. There was becoming issues with diet and how she was cooking in the house. She wasn't really respectful he wasn't really respectful of her career. He would belittle her. He obviously seemed like he lost his eye for her, and she seemed like she's lost his eye for him, and she wasn't happy.
Now, did she complain about violence or danger or anything like that?
Never.
Did she complain that he was not a good father?
No, no, he was very attentive to his sons.
So she agreed he was a good father.
Did you learn at some point that your sister was going to file for divorce?
I did.
And when you heard that she was going to file for divorce, how did you feel?
I felt bad for her. I mean, she was sad. I mean, no one goes to get married to get divorced. But she seemed like she spent 6 months in therapy with him, and it didn't change anything how she felt, and he didn't
You think this cameraman knows the prosecutor's just salivating, waiting to cross-examine Charlie Adelson?
change how he was. And I said, listen, I said, the kids need to grow up in a happy household. Like they can't have fighting. You can't have a miserable mom who's unhappy. You need to have the kids are better off growing up in two separate households where there's positive environment instead of negative.
Did your sister seem angry to you?
No, she seems sad.
The divorce filings sure seem angry, and I don't condemn somebody for getting angry when they're going through this. That's why you always have to be honest above everything else, regardless of what it looks like sometimes. Like, yeah, my sister was angry. He was accusing her of fraud and trying to take her law license away. She was angry, but she was sad more than she was angry. Like, yes, she was angry, as opposed for him to say, no, she wasn't angry. I mean, I don't know, man. That's just, maybe I'm nitpicking now.
How involved were you with the divorce proceedings?
I wasn't really involved with the divorce proceedings on the day-to-day stuff. I would definitely hear stories, most of which would come from my mom when I'd be driving to work in the morning or driving home. I would hear the latest update of what's going on. But I would say probably 20% came from Wendy and 80% came from my mom.
How did Wendy seem to you during the period when they were going through the divorce proceedings?
Extremely stressed, very stressed out.
How did your mom seem?
She was upset because my sister was stressed, and it was almost like a telephone game. Like my sister would vent to my mom, then my mom would be vented to me.
In general, was your perception that the litigation was very litigious?
Yeah, I did learn that. I mean, you were fighting over bicycles and all kinds of nonsense, and it seemed not to end.
Now, were there some big issues like relocation that were issues as well?
Yes.
Let's talk about relocation. Did there come a time that you learned that your sister filed a motion to try to relocate to South Florida?
I did.
And do you know why she wanted to relocate to South Florida?
Primarily, it was because she had no family in Tallahassee, and she had two young kids, and my parents lived in South Florida. I lived in Fort Lauderdale. She wanted to be closer to family, and she had a better, more secure job for her career in South Florida.
How did you feel about the idea of your?
And that's another thing. I think it's okay to say, like, she wanted to come home and be with our family. I think that that's normal when something like this happens. I mean, frankly, my wife wants to be near her family now, right? I mean, that's like, I feel like a normal, I like being near my family. I feel like that's a normal thing regardless. And to say that it's like more about job prospects and stuff, I don't know.
Sister and the boys moving to South Florida?
I thought it would be great. I mean, I hadn't lived in the same town as her since 1995. So I thought it'd be great to have her in town.
How important was it to you?
I mean, it wasn't real important to the point like I thought about it all the time, but I mean, if I thought about it, I'd be happy to have her back home.
How important was it to your mom and your dad?
Oh, to them, it was very important. They wanted her to come back because she had no family in Tallahassee.
That makes sense.
And what was your understanding of what Professor Markell thought about this relocation effort?
I knew he was against it, and he wanted her to stay in Tallahassee with him.
As any father
Did
would.
you learn at some point that the petition was denied for relocation?
Yeah.
And when it was denied, how did your mom feel about it?
My mom they were very disappointed. They were unhappy.
How about your sister?
She wasn't that disappointed, I guess, because she's a lawyer and she knows, what's the probability of something like this happening. And she said it was a long shot. She said she wasn't really expecting it, but it was worth it just to take a shot to see if it would happen.
Were you angry?
No, I mean, it didn't change anything in my life.
Now, we've seen some emails regarding converting the boys to Christianity. We've seen some pretty out there emails from your mom. Do you recall seeing those emails in this trial?
I do. Yeah.
And do you recall whether you saw those emails when they were written, back when they were written?
Yeah. I would get forwarded me all kinds of stuff. For sure.
Did you come up with any of those ideas?
No.
Now, on some of those emails, we'll see that you respond, "I like it." Why did you respond that way?
Well, my sister tried being really nice to Danny. It got her nowhere, and he was being really litigious, and he was looking to give her a hard time. And I thought that I thought it was a way that she would go ahead and give him a hard time back and kind of push his buttons the way he was trying to push her buttons. So basically,
And all of this is going to look really bad now. Okay. But imagine any family group chat on either side of any nasty, mean, litigious divorce. Okay. I mean, let's just keep that frame of reference. There's a lot of things that make him look horrible, like the wiretaps and paying and talking to Catherine McBanoa. The emails talking bad about your sister's soon to be ex, to me, is there's a line, right? When you start talking about hitmen, the line gets crossed. When you start talking about, relocation or doing things that would annoy him, as horrible and mean, and I wish nobody did it, it's very common. So I think we have to remember that. And there's probably people on the jury that have been through divorce or have family members that have been through divorce. So, towing the line is going to be really important here.
if he's being a jerk to you, just be a jerk back and see if maybe he'll stop. So I didn't think any of those things she was actually
I agree,
gonna
Sue.
follow through with, but I thought that it would really push his buttons. So I thought, why not give it a shot?
But we haven't gotten to any of the hard stuff yet.
Now, I want to talk about the $1 million offer. Did you ever become aware of efforts by your family, including yourself,
Yes.
to offer Professor Markel money to allow your sister to relocate?
I did. Yes.
And do you recall who came up with that idea?
It was my parents.
What were the terms of the offer? How much was it for?
The offer was for $1 million to have him move down south to South Florida with my sister and the boys. And that would afford him enough money that he could easily commute to his job in Tallahassee for the days that he worked, just the way senators in South Florida commute to Tallahassee all the time. And that was the idea behind it.
Now, how were you involved in this idea?
Not super involved, but I definitely said to my parents, I said, I will help, and I will pay a third of that $1 million. And when Wendy one day starts making real money, and she's able to, I want to be paid back.
At this point in time, were you making more money than your parents?
I was, yes.
Did you or your family ever speak with an attorney about the legality of this offer?
I didn't, but I know they wanted to run it by an attorney. I think they used Gary Cohn to run it by.
Do you know if the offer was ever made?
As I sit here today, I know that the offer was never made. But back when the offer I thought was made, I thought it was made and I thought it was turned down.
Did you, Charlie, you like to talk a lot, right?
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I talk until I listened to all those tapes. And evidently I do. I mean, I knew I liked to talk, but didn't realize how much.
When you got involved in this $1 million offer, would you talk about it with others?
Yes.
How would it come up?
It would come up when people would say, doesn't your sister want to move back home? How's she doing? And I said, yeah, no, she definitely wants to move back home. We tried everything we could. Like we even offered $1 million to Dan to see if he would move down with her. And it didn't work. Like he turned it down.
Now, did you ever talk with Catherine McBanoa? And we'll talk a lot about her in a little bit. But did you ever talk with Catherine McBanoa about that $1 million offer?
Yes, I did.
And
this is where we start to connect what nobody else knew about until opening statements, and that is the extortion plot against Charlie Adelson.
what do you remember telling her?
The same thing I told everybody else is it came up when she was asking me about, doesn't your sister want to move back home? And I said, yeah. I said, we tried everything we could. We even offered Danny $1 million to move back to South Florida, and it didn't work. It's the same thing I said to her is what I said to a bunch of people.
How did she respond?
She was like, wow, that's a lot of money. She's like, you got to take out a loan for that? And I said, no, I got cash. I can pay for it.
Now let's talk about
Weird conversation to have with your girlfriend, right? Like, I mean, your wife, sure, if it's her money too, but very weird for like a girlfriend that's not in your family to tell her you made that offer, for her to ask you if you'd have to take out a loan, and for you to tell her you'd have to pay cash. Now, excuse me, boyfriends brag and things like that. So maybe it was that. There are some things that are weird, but again, nothing is coming off horribly bad for him so far. He is not coming off as a unlikable guy that people are going to hate so far. So far, so good, but the background is literally the easiest part to get through.
gifts to your sister during her divorce. In general, did you provide any financial assistance to Wendy during the divorce?
No, she never asked, and I never gave her any money.
Did you pay for her lawyers?
Never.
Now, did you give her any gifts? And let's just
So one of the things I'll just tell you, because a lot of people are saying 333K cash, wow. One reason that this is potentially fitting into the defense's theory is, if he was going to hire a hitman, why would he only pay 100 grand? Right? Number one. Number two, if he had this much money in cash, why wouldn't he just pay whatever the amount was all at once up front? Why would he have to pay month over month or week over week? Well, the defense's theory is because it was extortion. It was ongoing. It was never ending. That's very different than hiring a hitman and paying a one-time fee, paying it all in cash. So they could be trying to set up that background information as well. We got to keep in mind, what's the defense's reason for asking these questions?
start with the broad question, and then we'll break it down.
Yes.
Give her any gifts?
Yes, I've given her gifts.
Okay. Do you recall giving her a TV?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, when she was moving out of the marital home, and she was starting, from scratch in a new house, she didn't take up any. It only took her belongings. I said to my mom, I said, "What does Wendy need? Like, what does she need for the new place?" And she said, "Actually, she's leaving the TV set. She needs a TV set for the house." So I said, "All right, fine." I said, "Go to the store up there, and go to Best Buy and pick out a really nice TV set, and I'll pay for it." I said, "Buy it, and I'll give you the money."
Now, do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was. Want me to say what?
Yeah, tell me what the joke was.
What happened was, like, when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, the stupidest thing I ever said in my life. And I said, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid, but I do that a lot.
Did you make that joke to others?
Yes.
Did you make that joke many times throughout 2013 and 2014?
I made that joke when she was having problems and she was fighting and she was upset. I recycled the joke. It was stupid.
Did you ever say that joke to Catherine Magbanua?
Yes, I did.
Just to be clear, did you ever look into hiring a hitman?
No, never.
Are you aware that the divorce proceedings settled in July of 2013?
Yeah, I believe it ended in summer of 13.
Now, how did your sister react to the settlement?
I think she found it as like a sense of relief. It seemed like she had closure. She knew what she was going to be doing and where she was going to be living, and I think she was just looking. I think she was happy, happy in the sense that she was able to put it behind her.
What was the custody arrangement? Do you know what the custody arrangement was?
I know it was 50-50.
After the settlement, how were things with Professor Markel and your sister?
I think they were calm for a little bit, and then it got litigious. There'd be little brief areas of calm, and then I think he kept trying to bring her back into court, and it started becoming litigious again.
What was your understanding of this mostly based on?
Things that I'd hear from my mom, probably 20% from my sister, 80% from my mom.
Was your mom upset?
She would get upset when my sister would tell her about Danny pushing her buttons and filing all these things in court.
As any mom would.
What about you? During the period of all this litigation, what were your feelings about Professor Markel?
I thought he was being a jerk. I mean, hearing stories that he's showing up at her work and bad-mouthing her to other colleagues and saying horrible things about her, I thought he was just being a jerk to her.
Now, would you think about this all day long, in the morning and at night? I mean, how important was this to your life?
It wasn't. I mean, I would only think about it when I'd be listening to a story, and it would be I'd be driving in the car talking to my mom. She would relay the latest that my sister told her, and then she'd be telling me, and that's when I would think about it. But I mean, I never for a second was at work thinking about it or doing activities that I enjoyed thinking about it. When I wake up in the morning, I never thought about it.
Were you panicked at all about it? Were you concerned that your sister was going to be disbarred? Anything like that? Was that a big issue for you?
No, I mean that was a nonsense threat.
When you would learn about things, though, would you talk about what was going on to others?
Yeah, I did talk a lot.
Why would you, considering your sister's divorce wasn't, and her issues with Professor Markel weren't a huge part of your life, as you've testified, why would you be talking about it to others?
When I talked a lot.
How would it come up?
And it would come up when I'd be sitting at the dinner table and I'd hear this crazy story that my mom told me from earlier that day, and I guess it's more interesting than talking about teeth. So I would sit there and I'd share things with my girlfriend or friends, and I'd relay stories.
By the way, during this time period, and now I'm talking about late 13, second half of 13 and 14, were you still speaking with your sister about the same amount or more?
I would say it's probably about the same, that every 10 days or so we talk.
Did you travel to Tallahassee to check on her after she filed for divorce? How many times did you come to Tallahassee during this time period?
Never. I think the last time I came to Tallahassee was 2011, 2010.
Now, what was your understanding of how Wendy felt about the idea of staying in Tallahassee as time went on?
I think she understood that's what her life was going to be. I mean, she loved her job up here. She was getting excited about things. She was dating people. She was embarking on her new life in Tallahassee.
What was her? Did there come a time when she won an award, and what do you remember about that?
I remember I was real proud of her. She wrote a book, and the book was selected by Florida State to be the mandatory reading for all incoming freshmen. And she was chosen to be the speaker.
People are saying there's an echo. I'm trying to figure out why it's echoing now, but wasn't before. So I will mute my mic, and hopefully that fixes the echo problem until we can fix it.
To the incoming class, and that was to take place in August. And I know she was super excited about it, and we're all planning to come up there and be there for her.
Okay, I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about Catherine Magbanua. Can I have one moment, Your Honor?
Take your time.
So now we start to get into Catherine Magbanua, and we're going to see exactly how they are going to walk into. A lot of people saying no echo. Yeah, I don't think there is an echo because we are following here on another stream as well. Doesn't sound like an echo, but.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Catherine Magbanua. How did you first meet Catherine Magbanua?
I met Katie in the summer of 2013. She started working the front desk of the dental office that I worked at.
And what was that dental office? Where was it?
The name of the office was Sophie Dental, and it was in South Beach.
What did she do for the dental office?
She was the front desk and office manager for the office.
How often would you work in that office?
I was there, say, every 3 weeks. I was there for half a day every 3 weeks.
Was that office a big generator of income for you?
It was one of my better offices, yeah.
Now, you said you met her in July 2013. When did you first go out with her?
We first went out, it would have been first week of October, around October 10th.
And who initially pursued who?
I pursued her.
Why did you ask her out?
Katie was really cute. She was friendly. She went to she actually graduated from UCF, also different time, but she graduated from there. She was a really smart girl. I mean, she was extremely smart and witty, and that's why.
She has to be smart, right? To conjure up this plan to extort a dentist and an entire dental family. She's no dummy. She's the mastermind. So you can't say the mastermind is not smart. Again, there's a reason for everything here. You don't want to waste any time when the defendant's on the stand.
Sure.
Once you went out with her, did you learn that she had 2 kids?
I did.
Now, initially, did you learn anything about her ex-husband?
No, the only thing I knew is that she'd been with somebody for about 10 years and that she was now single.
After you dated her a couple times, what did you like about her?
Well, and aside from the initial things, what attracted me to her was she had a very busy life also. And my life was so busy, it was hard for me to be in a relationship where someone wanted to go have dinner at 5 o'clock and hang out with me a couple days a week. So she was working full time, had 2 kids. So she was fine seeing me once or twice a week. And we both had very little time.
Now, you said that your first date was sometime in early October 2013.
Yeah, it wasn't even a real date. We just went and had dinner. There's a restaurant in the building. We finished late. I said, "You want to grab dinner?" We ate at the building.
Did you ask her just 2 weeks later if she could find someone to kill Professor Markel?
No, not at all.
Did you have a Halloween party with her?
That would be
or
wild.
Trick or treat?
That timeline would be really wild. Also kind of feels like that's what all the evidence points to, right? But I mean, anytime something is wild or crazy, as you're the defense, you have to point it out and make it seem as wild and crazy as possible. Doesn't make it impossible, but it could just go to your theory.
Meeting with her, and after the party, you say, "Hey, do you know anyone who can take care of my ex-brother-in-law for me?"
No, absolutely not.
Now, back to the relationship. Over time, did it become more serious?
Over time, in the beginning, it's always like you're just trying to see who each other is. And then as time went on, she wanted to get more serious. I'd say probably by the springtime, by probably around March, she started asking me.
Now, did you consider her to be your girlfriend, though?
She was my girlfriend, yeah.
Did you consider yourself to be exclusive?
After the first 3 months ago, yeah, for sure.
Did you ever see a possibility of marriage with her?
No, I didn't.
During the time that you dated her, how often? Let's be clear. We're talking about now the beginning of 2014.
Right.
So let's keep it far away from July. During the time that you dated her, how often would you communicate with her?
We talked every day.
When would you talk to her?
I'd call her when I was in the car driving to work. We texted throughout the day, and then I'd always talk to her at nighttime.
Where was she living at the time?
She was living in North Miami.
And again, you were living in the same place in Fort Lauderdale?
Same house in Fort Lauderdale.
How often would you see her?
I would see her once a week. Sometimes every once in a while it would be twice, but I would say more often once than twice.
And when you saw her, what would you typically do?
We'd go to dinner, hang out, watch a movie, hang out at my house.
Did you have any relationship with her children?
No, I met her children on one occasion, maybe twice, but definitely not more than twice.
Did she go to family events with you?
She did meet my family a couple times, yeah.
She met your sister how many times, if you recall?
2 times.
And how many times do you think she might have met your parents?
I'd say maybe around 8 times, 8 or 9 times.
Was she a patient of your dad's?
Yes, she was.
We're going to get into this in more detail later, but let's be clear right now. Did Catherine Magbanua ever work for your dad or for you at the Adelson Institute?
No, never.
Again, big evidence that the state thinks is so important, and it was a aha, gotcha moment that she was getting paid by Adelson, but not working there. Well, the defense is trying to work that into their theory and say, we know that. That's true. We'll admit it because she was extorting us, not because we were in on this conspiracy together.
Now, I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but as time went on in 2014, did she want to be more serious?
Yeah.
And what did you think about that?
I liked it the way it was. I mean, it was good in the beginning. My life, I wasn't looking to change it. I was still in that workaholic mode. But she started asking me, what are we? What are we doing?
At the time that you met her, and I want to talk a little bit about your knowledge of Secreto Garcia now. At the time that you met her, to your knowledge, she was single, right?
Yes.
And I think you testified that initially you didn't learn anything about her ex.
Nothing other than she was completely single. She was done with him.
Net woman, thank you again. All of these new members coming in.
I want to show you defense exhibit. It's not in evidence.
Warlock, 47-year-old single dentist in South Florida, probably dates a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of different backgrounds that he meets a lot of different places. She worked front desk somewhere. You hear the nurse doctor stereotype all the time. That can extend to dentist and assistant, I guess, as well, even though he wasn't her assistant. She was the front desk at an office he worked at. They're getting a document
I'm
together.
showing
They're
you
about
what's
to show
marked
it.
for identification purposes as defense exhibit 34. Please take a look at it. Are these text messages between you and Catherine Magbanoa on November 27th at 2:13?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I'd move in defense exhibit 34 at this time.
Response?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Please
State
approach.
34 at this time. November 27th is between you and Catherine. Are these text messages between you and
We're going to have mic issues if I got to hit mute. That's why I don't like to hit mute. There are text messages between Charlie Adelson and Catherine McBonwa, and the state's objecting to hearsay. Out of court statement used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. The defense is going to have some other reason to bring in these text messages, not necessarily for the truth of what's in the text messages, but maybe to set up some context. It could also be used to impeach something that Catherine McBonwa already testified to. It could be for the effect on the hearer. Charlie Adelson, why did he do what he did? Well, it's because of what Catherine McBanoa said on these text messages. So that's why I backed it up, just to make sure that's what it was. Text message between Catherine McBanoa and Charlie Adelson. They're up at sidebar now, and we will see if they're able to come in or not. And because we pause and talk, we can skip at least some of the sidebar discussion.
Here's ruled.
All right, here we go.
As the hearsay is overruled, you may continue with your examination.
Overruled. So the text messages are coming in. Let's hear what Charlie Adelson and Catherine McBonwa talked about that the state objected to and didn't want to come into evidence.
these text messages, are they a true and correct reflection of your messages on November 27th, 2013?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I'd move in exhibit 34 at this time.
Any further objection?
There you go.
They are admitted at this time.
May I publish?
You may.
Thank you, Rebel Duck. And yes, everyone in the Lawyer You Know fam.
Okay. You see the timing is in military time, so it says November 27th at 13:42, and that's 1:42.
Yes.
Katie says, my ex knows about you. I'm pretty sure I know how he knew because he even knows your name. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And you say, do I know him from my past? You see that?
Yes, I do.
What are you asking Katie here?
I have no idea who her ex is, and she's saying he knows me. So I'm saying, do I know him?
And that's in late November 2013, right?
Yes.
That's after 1 month almost after Halloween, correct?
Yes.
Now,
And again, I think an important context to this is they don't know that these text messages are ever going to become public and be put up on a big screen in a courtroom at a trial. This wasn't planned. It's a very normal conversation, like he doesn't know who Katie's ex is. and these vague conversations that show that at the time you're not trying to hide anything, you don't know who someone is, to me, is a pretty good tell that maybe this wasn't all set up the way Catherine McBonowa said it was set up. Vicky, thank you for being here.
As time went on, did you learn more about her ex?
In the springtime, I did.
In February, was there an incident with Katie and her ex that you recall?
Yeah. I remember her coming over to my house, and she was pretty upset. She had a mark on her neck. They got into an altercation, and he ripped a necklace that he'd given her off her neck. And she was crying, and she was all upset.
How did you react?
She could tell I was upset. I mean, someone just roughed her up, and she could tell I was upset. And she said, "Don't do anything." She goes, "He will kill you. He will kick your ass. You don't stand a chance."
So that was maybe a slip of the tongue by Charlie Adelson. So Catherine McBonowa tells you that her ex will kill you if you step to him. So if you're looking for a hitman, maybe I have one for you. I'm writing that down on my yellow pad if I am the state. I'm going to say, so you said that Katie told you what kind of man her ex was, how dangerous he was, right? Because you said that on direct. Any slip of the tongue like that, that needs to be examined a little further.
Now, why did you continue to date her after this?
I didn't take that as a threat to me. I just took it as she's got a crazy ex-boyfriend that wants her
Dangerous
back. And
ex-boyfriend.
she's got 2 kids with him, and it wasn't a threat. I didn't feel like he was threatening me. She just was like, it's a part of her life that I wasn't going to hold against her.
I want to show you a couple other texts related to your relationship with Ms. McBonowa in January, February, and March of 14. And these will be Defendant's Exhibits 35, 36, and 37. And I'll give a copy to the January text is 35. The February text is 36.
They're looking for documents here.
And the March 24th text, do you have that one? Is 37.
Yeah, it's a legal pad, Azam. I don't know why it's yellow. I'm sure there's a reason. My dad probably knows.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Just put it aside. That's 36. And that's 37. Can you take a look at these items? Do you recognize these text messages?
Yes, I do.
Are they accurate reflections of your text messages?
They are, yes.
I would move these exhibits into evidence now, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor. I'm storing it in the minutes.
You can show me a copy of the exhibits.
Yes, Your Honor.
Another hearsay objection on text messages. And I'm so pumped that you're able to be here and hang out with us as you get your chemo and beat cancer. And I hope that this will provide at least something that helps the time pass. And I hope that, you have peace throughout the process and, keep us updated because we've had some great success stories we've celebrated and we've mourned with people in the chat before. So I appreciate you sharing this with us and for being here with us this morning. It's probably a very similar argument. My guess is if the judge let the other text messages come in, he's going to let these text messages come in. But thanks, Ann, for being here. So some people may get annoyed or say not organized or whatever, but I got to be honest. The best attorneys take their time. They don't rush. They don't look flustered. And if they can't find a document, they take their time and they take it, especially right now. The judge is not going to rush or step on this defense attorney's toes one bit with the defendant on the stand in a case where his life is literally on the line. So the fact that he's looking through some papers, shuffling through some stuff, making some notes, again, to me, is the sign of a good defense attorney. I know some people don't like his style, don't like how he asks questions, or don't like him. That's fine. I'm just saying there's a difference, and we can tell the difference, and we've seen it in a lot of trials we've watched. You don't want to look hurried or rushed throughout the process. Be methodical, get all the information out that you need to. Thank you, Team YouTube. I think the judge is reading the text message right now to make a decision on whether it's hearsay.
Exhibits.
I have, Your Honor.
Exhibits.
I have, Your Honor. My objection is hearsay.
Attorneys can briefly approach.
We're gonna have a little talk about it, I guess, as to whether or not these are here. This is hearsay. Nicole, I do not know if this is going to be the last witness before resting. Usually, when you call the defendant, he either goes first or last. That's the most common approach. Sometimes attorneys will say, even clients in civil cases, but sometimes attorneys will save a witness that they think is going to be really solid for after, just in case it doesn't go well. So it's not the last thing the jury hears. In a case like this, it's going to be the entire case. The jury's probably going to make the entire decision or a huge decision based up on this testimony. So I don't think you're really going to be able to savor or salvage anything by calling a good witness after him. So I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I would think it's probably near the end of their case. I'd be surprised if they had, 3 more days of evidence. Now, I'm wondering if the state has some rebuttal evidence, because almost everything's going to be open once the defense puts on this theory, and basically Charlie Adelson testifies to everything. Now that opens up everything to rebuttal, because rebuttal has to be limited to the defense's case in chief. So if they just call that family law lawyer, rebuttal would have been limited to basically the family law issues. Nina asked this early on. Why are some cases very short and others very long, even dealing with murder? Letitia was weeks. Here, the state already rests. Anytime there is a mental health defense, insanity plea, anything like that, it's going to be way longer, way longer. Death penalty cases, usually longer. But sometimes murder cases can be very short, very easy to try for prosecutors, frankly. Sometimes murder cases are the easiest cases in the world for prosecutors when you have certain evidence and undercover tapes and a murder weapon and, all these different things. It can actually be pretty easy. Overruled. Overruled. Text messages are coming in. Let's hear how they're used.
So let's talk about Defense Exhibit 35.
Sure.
Text from January 19, 2014. And in this exchange, what is Miss Magbanawa asking you about?
She asked me if I wanted things to be different, and she was saying how much she missed me.
And did you want things to be different at this point in time?
No, I wanted things to stay the way they were from when we just started dating.
Now, if you turn to Defense Exhibit 36, text messages from February 5th, 2014. What is she asking you? What does she start by asking you about? And you don't have to read it. Just tell the jury generally what she's asking you about. What is she concerned about?
She's asking if I'm talking too much about the girls.
And what do you tell her in response generally?
I say, no, I'm not.
And again, in this text message, she's asking you whether she's telling you that she wants more, right?
Yeah.
And how do you respond?
I ask her, are you thinking about getting back with your ex?
And then what do you say after that?
Oh, yeah. I say, you're the coolest and most fun girl, that I'm always happy when I'm around. And then I said, I know it's not easy, and I think we're doing a good job at not rushing things. So
And what were you trying to tell Miss Magbanua in this text message?
I was trying to say, I like you and I have a good time hanging out with you, but I don't want to rush things.
Now, moving to text messages in March of 2014.
So Jam asked, why isn't this hearsay? A lot of times it's just not used to prove the truth of what they're saying. And it's just the effect on what this is having to Charlie Adelson, why he did other things, not necessarily to prove that they were rushing or that she is the coolest girl or to ask if he's actually seeing his ex, but more to provide context to the conversation.
Ms. Magbanua texts you, you've mentioned me to your mom, and you say yes, and she says, I love you. Oh, baby. Why was this a big deal to her?
I guess when I'd spoken to her, I brought up that I'd mentioned her to my mom, and she thought I was making things more serious. So I think she got excited over that.
Okay, you can put those aside.
Judge, I'm going to object regarding defense exhibit 37 and ask for best evidence that be published to the jury.
I'll sustain on best evidence grounds. Please publish defense 37. Members of the jury get to reach your own conclusions as to the context of the statements.
Okay, let's publish it to the jury.
Best evidence is to actually see the statements, not take his word for it. So sustained objection, but we're going to see the statements anyway. So much ado about nothing.
March 24th at 12:17. You see she texts you and says, you've mentioned me to your mom.
Yes.
Do you see that you respond, yes?
Yes, I do.
Do you see that she responds, that made me so happy?
Yeah, she took it the wrong way.
Any other clarification, Your Honor?
She took it the wrong way, at least in his opinion. But what I think is interesting about this entire concept is if she is in cahoots and in this big conspiracy with his mom, wouldn't his mom already know about her? Is this where it began? How's this going to fit into the timeline? That's the interesting part about this.
Is it fair to say that she was excited that you had mentioned her to your mom?
Yeah, she was happy. I mean, she got overly excited. I wasn't expecting that.
Now, in the early summer of 2014, what were you telling your friends about your relationship with Catherine Magbanua?
Objection, evidence.
Sustain. Please lay a foundation if you can.
Was your relationship coming to an end in the summer of 2014?
Yes, she wanted more, and I didn't want anything more.
And were you communicating that to friends?
Yes, I was.
I want to talk to you about a dinner on March 11th, 2014, a Yardbird dinner. One moment, Your Honor.
Take your time.
Yes, I do.
Do you remember who was the dinner with?
I met Katie down in Miami on Lincoln Road, and my sister was in town, and I was already working down there. I remember I was in my scrubs, and my sister came and she brought the guy that she just started dating, who was Jeff Lacoste.
Do you recall where you sat?
Yeah, we sat outside the restaurant. There was a few tables set up on the sidewalk.
So this is the big dinner where the joke was made. Things were talked about that we've heard a lot of reference to already. where things started brewing basically. So he's obviously gonna have to deny any of that stuff happened, and this was just kind of a normal dinner, would be my guess.
And it was the four of us sitting there.
Did you know that you were being watched?
No, not at all.
Did you know that Sigfredo Garcia was thinking about killing you that night?
No, not at all.
Now, this is March 11th, 2014, right?
Yes.
During the dinner, do you recall discussions about ex-husbands between your sister and Catherine Magbanua?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall who initiated those discussions?
No, I don't.
Do you recall making a bad joke again at that dinner?
Yes.
And that's the same joke that we've already discussed.
Like he specifically recalls telling that joke at this one random dinner. That seems kind of weird to me too, but not a big deal.
Yeah. I did.
Now, after the dinner, who came back to your house?
My sister and Jeff Lacoste came back to my house.
What about Catherine Magbanua?
No, she went home to be with her kids.
And was it a normal night when your sister and Jeff Lacoste came back?
Yeah, but it's the first time I've ever had, I think, my sister and her boyfriend sleep over my house. So it was normal.
Did you ever have any conversations other than some text messages that Jeff Lacoste sent you with him after that night?
No, I never spoke to him again.
Did you know anything about a first attempted murder of Professor Markel in early June?
No.
So now we're finally getting into the dates where the crimes occurred, what he knew, what he was doing, what everybody else knew. This is going to be where he starts to build the extortion case against him and that he wasn't involved in the conspiracy. So now we're finally getting to the meat of what happened in this case.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about birthdays and your dad's birthday and a birthday present. And you may remember some text messages that the state showed during their case regarding wanting to talk to your. Give me 1 second.
The defense is Katie did all this for money. That's what Katie said, except she said she did it for money plus to help out the Adelsons.
Do you recall the state showing text messages where you're texting with your mom and she tells you that she can't talk right now, that she'll call you when she's alone, she's driving back and she's at a stop in Gainesville, and to erase the text message?
Yeah.
Do you
There's the
recall
smirk.
what that is all about?
It was about my dad's birthday.
Who was your mom with at that stop at Gainesville?
She was with my dad, so she didn't want to talk in front of him
And why didn't she want to talk in front of him?
because it was a surprise. Originally, we were thinking about doing a cruise.
What was a surprise? That you were going to kill Professor Markel, or that you were going to have a surprise birthday party for your dad?
No, it was going to be his 70th birthday party.
And
So all the secrecy and all the surprises and all the deleting of text messages and let's talk in person and not on the phone because somebody may hear us was actually about a surprise birthday party. This is their explanation. I want to know in the chat who is starting to lean defense or lean that there might be some reasonable doubt about the state proving this case. I'd like to know that because if there's just one juror that believes it, we could have issues on a conviction here if you're the state.
do you recall in that text message talking about a caterer?
Yes.
Now, you had discussed this caterer as far back as April and May with your mom, correct?
Yes.
And those are reflected in text messages as well, correct?
Yes, they are.
Remember what I said off the jump? Bring in anything you can to corroborate your story, especially if the state hasn't used it. So catering conversations even earlier than when the text message the state started showing can show a continued conversation about caterers. And it was actually about caterers. If anybody watches Vanderpump Rules, it's not about the pasta, right?
On June 5th, do you recall your mom texting you and asking you, don't forget to get information on the caterer?
Yes.
Now, what did you get your dad for his birthday gift?
I paid for the catering for the party.
And what type of catering was it?
It was a chef came to the party and they cooked paella and seafood, and then we had a bunch of desserts also and salads.
I'm showing you what's marked for identification purposes only as Defendant's Exhibit 43. I'm showing you what's marked as Defendant's Exhibit 43. And these are a composite of all of your text messages between June 2nd, 2014 and June 7th, 2014. May I approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Can you look through this and see if this is an accurate reflection of all your text messages during that period?
Some text messages of our own for the defense, right? For the jury to look at, to show that what we're saying is actually corroborated.
Yes, they are.
Judge, I would move in Defense Exhibit 43 at this point in time.
I'm going to need to review the exhibit. State, do you have any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, hearsay and relevance.
Please bring me a copy of the exhibit.
Similar arguments, and therefore the judge has to review the text messages and see whether or not they should come in. He's let everything in so far. So I assume he'll let them in, especially because they're saying everything's in code. And if these text messages prove that they were talking about these code things way before the state showed any text messages, I do think it's relevant. I do think it should come in and the jury should be able to make that decision. Tons of new members today, which is really cool. It's always fun to add a bunch of new members to the crew and the best chat on YouTube. Wheezy, I am going to cover it as long as I possibly can today. I'll have to take some breaks at certain points, but I have scheduled a ton of things during when the lunch break should be. So we'll see how much we can squeeze in all day today.
Is going to take you back to the jury. Members of the jury, the bailiff is going to take you back to the jury room. We will resume with the testimony momentarily.
So the jury is going back before we hear what's going on with these text messages.
Seated. If the attorneys can approach.
So they haven't made any arguments that I've seen, at least, out in front, or very many arguments out in front of the cameras for everybody to hear and see, which is always interesting when that's the decision that they make. Some people leaving the courtroom while the attorneys and the judge discuss it. E. Erickson said, Peter, it hasn't been your feed problem yesterday or today. We're having it up here in the courthouse. Yeah, there had to be some points where it was like freezing or spotting up, and that stuff happens sometimes through these trials, especially. I mean, streaming it like this on all these different platforms is still relatively new, and it's gone a long way in just a couple years, but it still is relatively new to be doing it at this level. So again, we appreciate it always. I appreciate it as well whenever this can happen and we can get stuff like this done, because it's not easy to do, and it really changes the way this all works. Nirvana, what is the defense attempting to sell? The defense is attempting to sell that some of these things that seem like code are not code and are legitimate, A, or B, the secret was a surprise party. The secret was a gift for Wendy. The conversation was actually what the conversation was about, but they didn't want to let either certain people they were there or around or on the phone with, or I think we'll see, but I think an argument that may be coming as well, because you hear the Markel boys in the background, or you hear Magbanwa's kids in the background, I could even think the defense might say, we want to talk in person, not over the phone, so the boys couldn't hear us. It's a private adult conversation. We didn't want the children to be able to hear it. I think those things could be coming in this defense. That's why it seemed so secret. That's why it seemed like code, things like that. Netwoman. Didn't he say that Wendy wanted to move with the kids in April? I can't remember where the motion for relocation was. I can't remember the exact date from it, but she definitely wanted to move down there multiple times. And that's the point, is to act like she didn't really care, or act like she didn't really know if she wanted to, or she was just doing it for a job. Come on. We all know that that's not true. She wanted to be close to her family. Her family was pretty close. They took care of her. They were well off. They could pay for a house. They could pay for the kids, whatever. So it would have been nice to be around family. I think there's nothing to condemn about that. Now, how far were they willing to go is something a jury's going to have to determine. If you read, just for anybody that's never been involved or never seen any documents in family law cases or watched a family law trial, they are about as nasty as anything you could ever imagine. The words people say, the way they speak to each other, text messages, emails, in open court, you would think that the venom and poison in their words, that they would want to end people's lives on the other side of a family law case. But very few of them actually do it. And that's what it comes down to, is when something happens, you're going to be suspect number one. And the Adelsons basically knew that. Gypsy Soul. It's not about the pasta. Love it, Peter. I cannot believe you know some Vanderpump. I mean, I used to watch my wife loves Vanderpump and all those Bravo shows. So sometimes I catch random ones, but Vanderpump was actually one that I enjoyed back when Jax was wild and out, way back in the day. I haven't kept up with it as much with all the Scandival stuff. I saw some of it, but I
12
never missed it
minutes
back in the day, which is
until 10:30.
funny. Okay, so Judge comes back. Let's see what he says.
12 minutes until 10:30. Mr. Adelson, if you need to step down and go back to council table, you're permitted to do so.
All right, so we are on a 10-minute break. How do I make it? I guess that probably works for now, right? While we're on break. All right. So we are on break here. Why delete messages for a surprise party? Does his dad use his phone? EB. My dad's right around the age of Charlie Adelson's dad at the time of his birthday party. I don't think my dad would have any way to go into my phone and check all my text messages with everybody to figure out that we're planning a surprise party for him. I mean, how many 70-year-old guys are going through their adult sons' phones to try to figure out, whether there's a surprise party or not? And as long as it's not him, why do you care if anybody else sees that? And that's something that I would argue if I was the prosecutor. Yeah, Cookie said we saw some of those texts during Depp v. Heard. Ain't that the truth? CJ, it must be so hard for the jurors not to chit-chat about his testimony, maybe even the clerk of court. One of the most difficult things throughout the case that lawyers and judges really try to push home to jurors is, while the case is ongoing, you're listening to things, you're making notes, you may even be coming to some conclusions. Don't talk about it with your other jurors. Don't ask whether somebody else believes him or not. Don't ask where somebody else is leaning. Okay? You've got to try to keep yourself from the temptation of doing that if you are a juror who's been paying attention, trying to make the big deal about, or trying to make the right decision about this case, and you want to see only the people sitting in that box with you have the same perspective as you do. And that's all and nothing, right? They see everything you see, but they also don't see what you don't see that a lot of us are seeing, right? Whether it's online,
do it with Charlie to get to his parents, and it's just
articles. When it comes to that, to me, that's really what comes down to why it's so hard for jurors not to talk to each other. Because even if you were going to go home and talk to your wife or your husband or your kids about it, they're not watching it every day. They're not catching everything. They're not seeing the evidence up close and personal. They're not seeing the facial expressions and whether somebody's really crying or not. To me, that is what's so hard about jurors not talking to each other. It's because of the perspective that they share that nobody else really has. Robin, Peter, are you going to follow the Maya trial today too? That would be physically impossible to follow the Maya trial while also streaming this one. I will try to catch if there are arguments about the documents and things that almost just kicked the light over. The documents and things that may have come in yesterday. When closing arguments happen, I will watch them, and I will give breakdowns and recaps of the closing arguments. Yes. Midwest, who actually did the killing the guy on the stand? No. So one trigger man, Garcia, who was the ex of Charlie Adelson's ex, was the actual trigger man. Luis Rivera, I guess somebody he was in a gang with went with him. But no, Charlie Adelson was basically like the money man who ordered the hit on the back end of this whole conspiracy in this case. Campbelltown, welcome to the membership crew. Ashley, can these jurors take notes? Usually in Florida, you can. I'm not positive if these jurors are allowed to. I did not hear that from the beginning of the case. Jenny said she's a bailiff for her county, and family courts are the most vile, not felony, but family. It's unbelievable what people will say or do regarding relationships. I agree 100%. That's why I stay away from family. I can handle the worst of the worst criminal cases. There are plenty I turn down as well, but family law, I have no interest in at all. Hey, please, not the subject of this, but asking, are we going to have another Murdoch trial? Please. I don't know, but I'm also going to do a video on them trying to get Judge Newman recused if I ever get time. Not sure what this case is about. Okay, Patty. Charlie Adelson, whose trial it is hold on a second. Whose trial it is the brother-in-law of the victim of this case. And the state's theory is he and his ex-girlfriend hired hitmen who were connected to the ex-girlfriend. One of them was her father of her children and ex-boyfriend, and his gang member friend, to drive to Tallahassee, commit the crime, come back, and they all got paid off, and that was it. So they're trying to prove how far into the Adelson family, which is the in-laws of the victim, this really goes. And right now they have convicted or got plea deals, or even sometimes after a mistrial and a second trial, the girlfriend as the quote unquote mastermind, the trigger man, which was her ex-boyfriend, and then the other gang member who was also an accomplice. And now they're going to Charlie Adelson. And then they also have other members of the Adelson family, which is the in-law family of the victims, as unindicted co-conspirators, meaning they think they were involved. They just haven't been indicted yet. Gypsy, Jax effed himself when he called it his show to Lisa Vanderpump, and it's not the same sense that he brought the drama. Yeah, he was wild. Jax was absolutely wild on that show. Smile, how come it took 10 years to convict him? Well, it's a good question. And that's something the defense is going to say. You had all this same evidence way back then. Why didn't you arrest him then? Why didn't you convict him then? And CJ Drake asked the same question. And the state basically said the enhanced audio, the enhanced video. We all now can see and hear things better that we couldn't before. Number one. Number two, all these other defendants that were convicting are flipping. Catherine Magbanua, 10 years ago or 9 years ago or 8 or 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 year ago, she was not flipping and testifying against Charlie Adelson, even after she was offered immunity. But now she is testifying against Charlie Adelson. So that's what's changed. That's what's happened. 420 Warlock, yes. A lot of them are in evidence, the family law documents. They've put them up on the screen. They've discussed them. Oh, Garcia was not a gang member. Okay, so just Luis Rivera was a gang member, I guess. The Latin Kings. My bad. So people saying Wendy can't be arrested. She has immunity. I believe it was only partial immunity. I haven't read her immunity agreement, but I don't think Donna Adelson or Harvey Adelson, the parents, have immunity or any deal like that. I could be wrong. I'm not positive. This is the first trial, gavel to gavel, I've watched on this scenario. I didn't watch either of Magbanua trials, and I didn't watch either of or Garcia's trial. I don't think Luis Rivera went to trial, but I'm not positive. So she has prosecuted other people regarding this. I know that. She was the prosecutor on Mike Bono's trial. Tina saying, Donna is the mastermind. I've heard Kate McBono was the mastermind, Charlie Adelson's the mastermind, now Donna's that mastermind. We don't know. Chris K, what happens if he refuses to answer questions on cross-examination? He can't. The judge can force him to answer. He can be held in contempt. That would be very, 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 very bad. Yeah, Katie not taking immunity is absolutely wild to me. Absolutely wild. Robin, Peter, what is your take? Was Dan unnecessarily litigious? Yes. I would say yes. He is a brilliant legal mind. Do you know how hard that would be to turn off if you feel like it was between you and keeping your kids? I honestly can't blame either of them. I can't imagine what I would do to keep my kids. Not this, obviously. But being litigious, filing things in documents that may help me win the case, as long as I believe that they were true and done in good faith. I mean, it's hard to condemn somebody like that. EB, Cross will be right after they're done with direct, which, I mean, they're getting into the thick of it. So I would guess direct is going to be done before lunch. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my gauge on it at this point. Welcome, Annie. All right, it's 10:29, and I don't know what's going on with the streams. It looks like maybe they've started a new stream, part 2. Yeah, so we're going to pull that up. And here we go. It looks like they are back. Oh, no. They're just still discussing the testimony that already happened in the trial. I'm sure you guys chat, let me know when they're back, and we will throw it up on the screen and continue to follow this thing live. I've only had to take one phone call during this so far, so I consider that a win. Lee, there's so much damning information that makes him look horrible, but I can't help it. He just doesn't come across as malicious and cunning or conniving to me. I got to toughen up my skepticism. Honestly, this is exactly what the defense hopes at least one of the jurors does, and that's enough for reasonable doubt for one juror, and that's enough for a hung jury. I mean, what's interesting about this case is it is so wild, it is so crazy that we've already had a hung jury once in Catherine McBono's trial. And then they went and tried her again, and she was convicted. So it's not completely impossible that this case ends in a hung jury. I do kind of think it makes more direct sense that Charlie Adelson would want to do this for his sister. So the motive is just so obvious, and all the code stuff and shady stuff and money changing hands. And Charlie decided to go with a theory that he kind of had to prove, which puts some burden on him, and we'll see if they're able to do it. When was Katie's immunity taken off the table? I don't know, but obviously before she was convicted. Yeah. Shoop-de-doop. It was so crazy when it happened. I graduated in 2013. So, I mean, this was so crazy when this happened. Virginia, absolutely. I think they're going to try him a second time if it's a hung jury. They did it to Catherine McBono. I think they're going to just keep doing it, keep convicting all these people. Dan Markel was a loved person in the legal community there. I do believe that. STX said, I'm not convinced he did anything. Well, we will see. We will see. Psychotic Goldfish. No, you did not miss it all. You really just missed a lot of background. They're just now getting in to the thick of why we are all here. Let me check the stream again and see if we're back in court. It doesn't look like we are. And by the way, it's not unusual for all of these breaks to take a little bit longer than 10 minutes. The jury's always like, what's taking so long? He was an oral surgeon. I think he said the gums and the bones in the mouth, which I've had some oral surgery myself, and it sucks. So a good one of those is always important. Nirvana said, whoops. Yes, he was a really smart guy. Nirvana, there is no mastermind, just idiots in a Prius shooting a perfectly good man. Agree. Well, The definition of mastermind in these kind of situations, I think there probably was one, but no genius, that's for sure. No good guys either. Edmo said, I feel he's putting on a show of meek, stupid, not capable of, etc., etc., but he is very smart and sly. He was a periodontist. Yes, perio school, he said. Paula finds Charlie Adelson more credible and thought Katie and Jeff Lacasse were not telling the truth. And again, I like getting all of your opinions in here in the chat because you guys are all potential jurors, and there are people on this jury that one could believe that Charlie Adelson is telling the truth, one could believe Jeffrey Lacasse and Kate McBonwar are telling the truth, and they're going to have to go back in the jury room and flesh it out and see who comes back victorious. All right, I am hearing we are back in court, so let's get the stream back up. I am not seeing it yet here, but we have it up on the screen for when it gets back. Joe Figueroa is asking or saying he doesn't think he did it. Yeti Man said, I live in Tallahassee. Wendy went completely out of her way driving to her lunch. Yes, that is one of the things the state's pushing on. The defense says, which I got to be honest, is not that abnormal in my opinion. I know a lot of people that do stuff like this where you drive to somewhere that's familiar and that's how you know how to get places. But also definitely could be some very damning evidence that the Adelsons were all in on it. Nina said she thought Jeffrey was the only person who actually wanted to be on the stand. Jeffrey Lacasse is Wendy Adelson's ex-boyfriend who basically said, yeah, they all did it. They were all talking about it. I know it was them. I might have to grab like a snack when court gets back. Find myself getting hungry. Not used to sitting here and streaming for hours. Usually an hour in, I'm done. People think Charlie is very manipulative and sly. Paula says, I drive the same route everywhere, even if it's longer. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are like that. Other people saying you think Charlie's doing a good job on the stand, then Charlie's guilty. And that's what's interesting about this. And that's why I like to have kind of differing opinions. And people sometimes don't like when someone disagrees with them. But if you're sitting on a jury with somebody, there's nothing you can do to force them to agree with you. You can discuss it. And respectful discussion sometimes can lead to people being on the same page. But you can't force them to change their mind, and their vote matters just as much as yours. Yes, KCL. He was one of the professors there while I was in law school at Florida State. J Ray, but if you see caution tape outside your ex-husband's house, you don't even call to make sure he's okay. Okay, Wendy. Especially when, like, I think he had the kids that day. So, like, are you sure he dropped them off? Things like that. I don't know. Yeah, all of it doesn't seem great. I also think it's weird that they gave Wendy immunity. The state must believe that she was not the mastermind behind all of this, but interesting. Or maybe they thought I don't know. That's an interesting decision as well. I think all along, Charlie is who they had their eye on. And that's why they offered Magbanwa immunity, was to get Charlie. Now it seems like they're going to get everybody. Yeah, it's all sus. All right, looks like we're back. Netwoman said, I feel so dumb. I just figured out that Knowles is for Seminole County, and I have family that lives there. So Knowles is for the Seminole tribe. They're very, very involved in Florida State. They just had the chief and princess of the tribe come and throw the spear out at the game that I was at. They crowned our homecoming king and queen. It's really cool how they're all involved in Florida State and a lot of what Florida State does. All right, looks like we're still waiting Still waiting. Declan, even if Charlie was being extorted, it still doesn't mean he ordered the hit, or he didn't order the hit. Makes it even more likely, honestly, that he ordered the hit and it was an easy target. It's a good point, Declan, right? So once they know you're going to pay once, just like he said about those renters, they become leeches and they ask for more and more and more. 1 month it's 5,000, the next month it's 10. So I would absolutely make that argument. Exactly what you're saying. Yeah, he had to continue to pay because they continued to extort him. Annie K, can Katie get a reduced sentence now? Yes, that is possible. That's what she's hoping for, but they didn't promise it to her before she testified because, again, that makes her look less credible. Laurie, Peter, what is the charge of person only involvement is paying for a hit on someone, no details, just being asked to pay for it? Does that make him first degree? Yes. Conspiracy, as guilty as anybody else in the conspiracy to commit murder. Can have different enhancements depending on weapons used and people, but yes. Paula, welcome. West Coast says she doesn't think the state has proven their case. Well, I think they're going to get a good chance here on cross, and they also have rebuttal. People think they rested early. I think they put on a lot of evidence, especially if I knew Charlie Adelson was going to testify. My guess is they knew. All right, I've got the sound on. Adelson's back up. I believe it's too late for Katie to roll it back after 10 years. She's probably
Make it look like he's totally not credible at all.
She's probably regretting decisions and desperate for a lessened sentence, in my opinion. It's not too late for her to get a lessened sentence, but I do agree with you. She definitely had better opportunities in the past to get full immunity and never be sitting where she's sitting today.
Rounds of both here and prepared to rule.
All right, here we go. He's going to rule on the text messages.
All right. I'm prepared to rule on the composite exhibit. As a composite, I am going to sustain the objections on the grounds of both hearsay and relevance, and also on 403 grounds, as it may create confusion of the issues themselves. If there are isolated portions that you wish to offer on grounds of relevance, that are relevant, I should say, and also you have a hearsay exception 4, I can reconsider that. Are there any statements that you wish to pull out of the composite and offer separately?
I'll stand on the record, Your Honor. I believe they all go to his state of mind, as I suggested to you, showing what he was thinking on these relevant time periods. And without seeing them in the collection, you don't see his state of mind. So I'll stay on the record, but you're taking away a defense of his, which is his state of mind, and the jury should be able to see that. I'll ask.
That's very good lawyering to protect the record. He's saying, Judge, no. And sometimes defense lawyers can be very smart in making these arguments. If you just take pieces, the appellate court might say, you got the gist of it in. But he's saying, no, we need all of these old text messages so they can see his state of mind, see how he acted, see how he was with, getting caterers or stuff like that, see how he talked in these same codes or whatever. But the judge said there's just way too much in there, way too much hearsay. It's not really relevant, and it's going to confuse the issue, and we don't want to unnecessarily confuse the jury with all of these other text messages. So do you want to just pull some? The judge and the state probably wish the defense would just pull some. The defense is saying, no, you're taking away a defense of his, which isn't a threat, but it is on the record saying this is very important to the defense, and the judge won't let us get into it. He's taking that out of the hands of a criminal defendant who's being charged with murder.
Questions about it. But
You certainly can examine as to generally what was going on during the time period. Again, part of this as well goes to the subject matter, which we discussed at sidebar. I don't want the jury to take away from what could even possibly be relevant in the composite to then also make that a prejudicial aspect of the deliberation in any way. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. We're happy to redact those sections, but if that would change your ruling. But
Well, even with the redactions, I think we still have to get back into specifically the 403 aspect of it and also the hearsay. but the court's ruling is what it is concerning that matter. You may examine, though, concerning the subject generally of the messages.
Judge, just for the record, I planned on doing the same thing. Oh, I have it. Oh, maybe not. No. What date was it? July 14th. Judge, I planned on doing the same thing for July 14 through 19. I won't do it considering I assume it's the same ruling, but my same arguments apply to that.
Very well, Ms. Koppelman, do you have similar objections for the entire composite block of text messages?
Yes, sir.
All right, again, if there are portions that you wish to extract from the composite and you believe that are both relevant and are not hearsay, I will certainly consider those, but as a composite exhibit, I am going to find that they would otherwise be not relevant or hearsay or create 403 issues with confusion of the issues at trial.
Judge,
Phil said, Peter, he wants to confuse the issue, doesn't he? Definitely wants to muddy the waters a bit and give them more information. Janet, do you know Seminole Wind by John Anderson? It sounds familiar, but I'm not positive. Not positive. Gypsy Soul, Papa Tragos did go to Florida State undergrad and law school just a long time before Dan Markell was there.
ma'am, I understand your ruling. May I
Go
make
ahead.
just one additional argument for the record?
Go ahead.
Just for the record. In the state's case in chief, they were allowed to put in phone calls showing arrows that they have no idea anything said on those calls. They're essentially the same thing as putting in text messages like this, except you actually see the content, right?
The chain of the traffic versus what is actually said.
They put in every call. Okay, they put in every call between these participants on those particular days, which, by the way, correspond mostly to the days that I'm offering these text messages for. They put them in for their own purposes. I think I should be allowed, under a 403 analysis, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, to put in the text messages to show the pattern or lack of pattern of anything. And that's what these text messages show. But I could just ask the questions, but I would like the record to reflect that under a 403 analysis, it was allowed for them. It's not being allowed for us.
I wouldn't exactly say it boils down to being that simple, but your objection is noted specifically as to what the state was permitted to demonstrate in their case in chief goes to either demonstrating motive or direct evidence of what they believe show the elements of the charges. As to these composite exhibits, and again, I don't want to get very deep into what the subject matter is, there are messages that either go to embarrassing of the other witnesses or litigants in this matter, matters that are wholly irrelevant, or matters that do not demonstrate in any way the theory of defense as the court understands it. If there are portions, again, that are specifically relevant to negating either the motive or any of the elements of the charges and are not hearsay, as argued by the defense, I will consider those separately, but as a composite on the whole, the 403 issues, the relevance, and hearsay issues, I believe, compel me to deny their admission.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So he's saying they were able to put in these calls that weren't necessarily relevant just to show who the calls were made between, you know, with the train car argument that they made. So he should be able to put these in. I think it's a good argument. I think it's interesting to keep all this stuff out. And he also said there was embarrassing things about other witnesses. So I don't really know what's on these texts. Lisa, 403 argument, usually we think about that the probative value is not substantially outweighed by the prejudicial value or something bad or that could be so negatively affecting the defense or the state. But in reality, another factor of that is to confuse the issues to the jury. And this is more about confusion than it is prejudicial, I believe. Obviously, not knowing what the text messages say, that's what it seems like they're going on, that they don't want to confuse the jury, and there's not enough probative value to these texts. Now, if it said if it was Kate Magbanua saying, you're going to do what I say because I'm extorting you for this money, it would come in, even though it may confuse the issues because it's obviously has a lot of probative value. But these seem to be just like everyday conversations just to prove how Charlie Adelson talks or that he was talking about other things or who he was talking to. They're trying to prove he talks to everybody all the time. So it may just be for that, and it may be unnecessary to prove that point. And that could be how the judge is balancing this.
Let's bring back in the jurors and we'll continue.
Charlie Adelson, how much
And
Is from June 2nd.
your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Here we go.
You had an opportunity to review your text messages from June 2nd to June 7th, 2014.
Yes, I have.
Anything in those text messages out of the ordinary?
No.
They're text messages about what types of subjects?
Work, personal life, just
So this is basically curing one of the problems that the defense would argue on appeal is testifying about these text messages. If he's allowed to talk about what the subject matter was, who he was texting, how he was texting to me, it basically cures the issue for appeal. So it's not really going to be an appellate issue that they didn't get to see all of the text messages because Charlie Adelson's allowed to testify about them.
Anything about a first attempted murder in Tallahassee?
no, not at all.
Anything about any sort of violence?
No, not at all.
Anything about any sort of panic?
No, not at all.
I mean, I do find that to be important because if you're hiring a hit on somebody in your family, maybe you'd be weird. Maybe you'd be texting, did it happen? Is it done yet? Have you heard? I mean, it seems like they had all this stuff kind of planned out where they were meeting in person, but I do think it's pretty interesting to think that he was just being completely normal. So he's like, is that like a very interesting mind you must have if you can do stuff like this with absolutely no fear, no conversation, no talking about it. And I do kind of think that makes it relevant, but he's able to testify to it. And again, a tactic by a lawyer that in the Maya trial almost got him in trouble is when you say, listen, I have this book that you wrote. Okay. I have this book. You wrote this book. We're not going to read this book, but you've looked at this book, right? What does this book say? The jury knows that you're saying something straight from this book. So he's holding up that stack of text messages. So the jury knows he just looked through the text messages. Here are the text messages. This is true, and giving a lot of credence to it, even though the jury's not going to be able to see the text messages. So that was a skillful lawyer moment that he kept holding up that stack of texts.
I want to talk briefly about July 1, 2014. Just kind of to give you a roadmap. In March, you had dinner with your sister, correct?
Yes, at Yarborough.
And we've learned that at that dinner, Sigfredo Garcia thought about killing you.
Yeah, he was stalking me with Luis Rivera.
And we've learned through this trial that a first attempted murder on Professor Markel's life happened, give or take, 6 weeks later.
Yes.
Now let's talk about July 1, which is about 3 or 4 weeks after that. By the way, up until July 1, had you ever talked to, texted with, met Sigfredo Garcia?
No, not at all.
What happened on July 1?
July 1, I was going to take Katie jet skiing, and I had the jet ski attached to the car, and I drove to her place in Miami, and I went to pick her up, and I remember it so well. I got flowers right before I picked her up. I bought flowers from the guy selling them in the middle of the street, and I picked Katie up, and we started driving out of her complex, and we got about 200 feet, and this blue car comes flying out of nowhere, flies in front of us, and slams on the brakes. And I've got a car, and I'm towing a 1,200-pound jet ski behind it. And she starts screaming, "That's T, that's T, that's T." And I'm like, I almost rear-ended this car. And this guy gets out of the car, and he comes over, and he's screaming every kind of four-letter word at me, threatening me. His face was real red. My windows were up. And the guy was going crazy. And, I'm kind of a little bit boxed in because the front of my car was almost against the rear of his car, so I couldn't drive past it. And I had a big jet ski and a trailer behind my car, so I ended up putting the car in reverse, doing like a little bit of a three-point turn, a little bit, swinging the car around. He then got in his car, chased alongside of us, and you can't, if you're towing a jet ski with a car, you can't go real fast. You don't have much acceleration. He was right alongside of us, rolled his window down, was screaming all this stuff at us. And when we got to the light, it was just turning yellow, and I gunned it. I remember making a left-hand turn. And I said to Katie, I go, "That guy's fucking nuts." And she goes, "Nuts?" She goes, "He's really calmed down." And I go, "What do you mean he's calmed down?" And she goes, "The old T I know would have broken your window and dragged you out into the street and beaten your ass."
Now, that evening, by the way,
Again, sounds dangerous, like somebody, if you wanted them to do this for you, would, but this was after the first attempt. There is some plausibility to what the defense is saying. I think the state has just too much evidence in this case, but there is some plausibility. Rachel, thank you for being with us. And Margaret, that's interesting.
Let's talk about, you say T. Did you know Sigfredo Garcia under another nickname as well?
Yeah, well, she referred to him as T or Tuto or Sufredo.
Now, that evening, did your father call you?
Yeah,
And what did your father say to you when he called you, Harvey? What did Harvey say to you when he called you?
he was worried about me
Why?
because he got a threatening message on his voicemail, and the guy was saying, you know, something to the effect of, next time I see you, it's going to be mano y mano. You know, don't fuck with me. You know, you don't know who I am, something like that, and then hung the phone up.
Again, this was July 1, correct?
Yeah,
And this is now 17 days before Professor Markel was murdered, correct?
it was.
So we have Sigfredo Garcia thinking about killing you in March before the first attempt, right?
Yeah,
And now we have him threatening you and trying to run you off the road just 17 days before the actual murder occurred, right?
yes,
You're aware that the state's theory is that you are co-conspirators with Sigfredo Garcia?
that's their theory.
Now let's go to July 5th.
Before we go to July 5th, I want to answer a couple of these questions. Sawyer said, afternoon, Peter, what did the defense mean with the ruling is taking away one of his defenses? Wouldn't he want this in entirely out? He would want it entirely in to show his frame of mind was not of someone that was hiring a hit that day. And Erica said, if I did something like that, I'd not talk on the phone or text about it. Jane said, I disagree, Peter. I don't think you would say anything or change. Well, Jane and Erica, I agree with you, except the state spent multiple days with all these text messages and phone calls after the bump about this Adelson family doing just that, talking about it, texting about it nonstop. So why were they not doing it at the time then? If they're the type of people that do that, and that's a main bulk of the evidence against them, I think showing the lack of it could be important as well, if we're thinking about it from the defense attorney's side.
Your dad's birthday party. By the way, what was served at the birthday party?
We had the paella and the chef there cooking it.
Okay. And how many people approximately attended the party?
It was in their apartment. They probably had, let's say, roughly about 30.
Okay. Did you invite Catherine McBanawa to the party?
No, I didn't.
The party was in their apartment, which was where?
It was in South Beach. It was in South Bay at the Continuum.
Now, what time did the party end?
We went from probably 7-ish to probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock.
How far is the Continuum in South Beach from your house in Fort Lauderdale?
It's every bit of 45 minutes, depending on traffic.
That evening, where did you sleep?
I slept over at Katie's house
Why did you sleep over at Katie's house?
because my brother was in town for my dad's 70th birthday party with his wife and their kids. And then my sister was in town, and the whole family was doing stuff the next day, and it was going to be at my parents' house, at their apartment. So I didn't want to drive all the way back to Fort Lauderdale and then all the way back to Miami.
Does Katie live closer to South Beach than your home in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, she's probably 15 minutes away, 10 to 15 minutes.
And did you go back to your parents' apartment the next day on July 6th?
Yeah, I slept at Katie's place. It was only 2 times I probably ever slept there. And then I went back to my parents' place like for lunch the next day.
Did Katie come with you?
No, she did not.
Now, I want to draw your attention to June 16th and a late night work with your assistant, Erica.
Yeah.
Do you recall that?
I do.
I know you're not going to know specific times, but how late did you work with Erica that evening?
We worked till about 10 o'clock at night.
And what did you do after work?
We'd worked through dinner, so we were both hungry. So me and Erica went to go eat dinner.
And what time did you get home, approximately?
I got home about 11:45.
When you got home, did you speak with Catherine McBanawa?
I did. We texted or I called her.
And during that conversation on the 16th, but it's really the morning of the 17th, I think, is midnight.
Yeah, it was after midnight.
What happened on that call?
Katie was questioning where I was and who I was with, and saying it was suspicious because I think I ended up calling her probably about 12:30 that night because I came home, changed, took a shower, and then when I finally called her, it was like 12:30. So she thought I was cheating on her.
And was it a heated discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I worked hard all day. You know, I didn't do anything wrong. I went out to dinner with Erica, and like, she was just questioning on who I was with and what I was doing, and she was unhappy with me.
Towards the end of the discussion, what did you agree to do with Katie the next day?
I told her I actually don't. My morning off is canceled. I don't start work until 1:45 tomorrow. I said, if you want, come up here and we'll grab lunch.
And did you have lunch with Miss Magbanawa the next day?
Yes, I did.
What happened when you had lunch with Catherine Magbanawa on the 17th?
She started all over again with like questioning me about the night before, and then she wanted to make plans with me to do dinner on Friday night, and she got very upset at me, and she was just like weirdly adamant, like, this Friday night I want to do dinner with you. Like, why are you saying you don't know? Like, you don't know you're fine to go do dinner with Erica and not call me till 12:30? And just didn't stop, and we got into a fight at lunch.
So let's take that a little bit slower. So you meet with her on the 17th, and on the 17th, your testimony is that she was adamant that she wanted to have dinner with you on the 18th. Is that right?
Yeah.
And where did she want to have dinner with you?
She wanted to make dinner plans and go down to Miami.
Now, this is all important because here is where the extortion is building. She wants to have dinner. She has to talk to him. She knows what happens. The only way that she can, get the money flow to start. That's really what it comes down to here with this timeline.
Was that odd?
I mean, it was Friday night. She was my girlfriend, so from that perspective, it wasn't odd. What was odd is that she was so adamant, and when I pushed back on it, there was no push. She was like, started questioning me even more.
Now, where were you going to work on the 18th?
I was working in Jupiter.
Okay. So we're in Tallahassee. So let's just make sure everyone knows where Jupiter is compared to Miami, where Catherine Magbanawa is, where she wanted you to have dinner. How far is Jupiter from Miami?
I would say with no traffic, it's probably 2 hours and 15 minutes, maybe 2:30.
And so, and I might have said the wrong month. We're in July. It's July, not June. July 17th, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, why did you want to go all the way back down to Miami? And what did you tell Catherine Magbanawa?
Telling Katie I'm going to be in the car for at least an hour and a half driving up to Jupiter. My back kills me when I'm in the car for that long. I got to drive back another hour and a half home. I got 2 offices I'm working in. I got 10 hours of surgery I'm doing. I'm like, I don't even know what time I'm getting out. And
we posted a poll on how you think Charlie Adelson's doing. We will post another one after Cross, don't worry. But indirect, as we're getting into the thick of it, what do you think? How's he doing? I just want to know what you guys think.
she was just like, oh, so it's just going to be another late night and you don't want to see your girlfriend on a Friday night?
And how did the lunch end?
I told her that I said, you're acting like a bitch. I didn't call her a bitch, but I said she was acting like a bitch.
And did you leave the restaurant?
Yeah, we had some words, and I put some money down on the table, and we both walked out. And I'm like, I got to get to work. I can't deal with this now.
Did you contact her, or did she try to contact you during the day of the 17th, July 17th?
She called me while I was at work around 6:30, but I was still working, and I didn't pick up the call.
When did you speak to her again?
I was pretty pissed at her, so I didn't call her until after 12 that night. After I came home, I went to the gym, took a shower. I called her after 12.
And when you called her after 12 that evening, did you apologize?
We eventually smooth things over a little bit. Like I felt bad for saying that to her, and she was still mad at me and still wanting to see me. So I did smooth things over, but not entirely.
Now, the next day, you have several text communications with Miss Judge. May we briefly approach?
Wants to make sure he's not going to ask anything inappropriate, or maybe see if the state has an objection to the text messages he's about to ask about.
At this point, hurting him.
Well, John,
So we'll have to see whether or not these texts come in, which again, every single thing in this case has been a fight and will be a fight. The state is working their way through the Adelson family. The state is working their way through convicting everybody they believe to be involved in the conspiracy to hire the hit and end the life of Dan Markel. And some cases they stop early. Some cases when they get the biggest fish, they stop. Some cases they don't do it until they get the biggest fish. The state has methodically gone through up the chain, up the ladder, starting with the triggermen all the way to Charlie Adelson at this point. The only other one people really think, actually, I guess Wendy and Donna are, they're both people think were really involved. We'll see if anything more comes out of them. But at this point, everything's a fight. Yeah, I don't understand why they're even talking about these types of situations. I think what they're trying to do is, people are saying, does he realize he sounds like a jerk?
You may.
I think the answer is yes. He realizes he sounds like a jerk, but they don't care because they want him to sound like a jerk, because they want it to seem like there's no way Katie would work with him. There's no way Katie would back him. There's no way Katie wouldn't want him to get in trouble because he was acting like such a jerk. I think that's what they're going for, but there are probably some jurors that do not like the way he sounds.
That day, now we're on the 18th, July 18th. Did you speak with your sister that morning?
I did.
What do you recall talking to your sister about?
I called her in the car on the way up to work, and I ended up talking to her. She's told me that she was having the TV set repaired. I thought she had told me that Lincoln had thrown something at it and broke the screen. So she was getting a TV fix. And then I was also, the reason I called her was because I was in a fight with Katie and I wanted to get her opinion on something. So I spoke to her and told her what I said to Katie, and she gave me sisterly advice like she usually does.
And again, that morning, you're in the car for quite some time?
About an hour and a half.
Where were the two? You were working at one or two offices that day?
I was working in two offices, but they're across the street from each other in Jupiter.
Okay.
So one of the other things that he can say, and we said this at the beginning, you've got to bring stuff the state doesn't have. You got to bring information the state doesn't know about. And what the state doesn't know about is the content of a lot of those phone calls. So Charlie Adelson is going to set this timeline, and he was a jerk. So he called and talked to his sister about it. And then he called and talked to Katie, or talked to his mom, and then Kate, whatever. And he can kind of explain the reason for all these calls in this order and what the content of those calls are. Now, it's up to the jury whether or not they believe it's true or false what he's actually saying the content of those conversations were, but at least he can take the stand and answer at least some of the unknown questions.
And during the call up to Jupiter, did you make several phone calls?
Yeah, that's my morning routine, and I was in the car for an hour and a half, so I was on the phone a bunch.
Now, there's several times where there is a phone call made, and then immediately after there's another call, and they're short calls, and then immediately after there's another call. Do you know why that was the case?
Yeah, because there's a stretch of highway between West Palm and up in Jupiter where you'll get drop calls constantly. So you'll call somebody, and then you can't hear the person, or it doesn't go through, and then you start talking, and you hang up and call them again. So the calls drop constantly up there.
That's actually true. From
Do
my
you
experience.
recall having some text message communication with a friend named Mike and also Catherine McBanawa about dinner that night?
Yes, I do.
And without getting into too many specifics, what was the general issue?
Mike had wanted me to get dinner with him because his house is kind of close to Jupiter, and sometimes when I'm up that way, I'll see him. Katie was still upset about the other day and feeling like I give more time to other people, and questioning why it's a Friday night and I don't want to spend it with her. I eventually just texted with Katie and I apologized for calling her a bitch and telling her I said she was acting like one. I didn't call her one, but evidently to some people there's no difference. I shouldn't have said it, so I ended up apologizing and making dinner plans with her.
So you chose to make.
And that's what makes you feel like it's kind of coached. For the people that feel like it's coached, yes, you talk about this. Yes, you prepare a witness. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to do that. They need to understand what it's going to be like. It's very nerve-wracking. It's probably their first time. But when he has that line set up, I said she was acting like a B. I didn't call her a B. He said it twice now. And it sticks out so much that it's like, that seems a little rehearsed.
Make dinner plans with Katie that night, correct?
Yeah.
And where the dinner plans were going to actually happen, did you get that far in making specific plans?
No, but I said I just want to do something casual in Fort Lauderdale. I don't want to get all dressed up and head to Miami.
Okay. Now, the second office.
So Catherine asked a good question, but isn't that discovery? So no. The defendant's statements about what happened on a call is not discovery. You don't have the right to take a criminal defendant's deposition like you would in a civil case. So no, whatever his statements are going to be about anything is not discoverable because of his Fifth Amendment right. That's why this is such a unique circumstance. You have no idea really what he's going to say. Now, sometimes you have a lot of other evidence that's going to make him look like a liar or totally contradict what he says. But other times there's no way to have something like that unless you have the other person on the phone call come and testify that, no, we actually talked about this, not that. And then it's a he said, she said situation.
You're working in for a little period of time, right? That evening. In other words, let me
Yeah.
You had a bunch of surgeries in that second office, right?
Yeah, they're usually packed.
And do you recall from a text message that around a little after 6, you were about to start a big procedure?
Yes, I do.
Now, at some point in time, you hear from your mom. How do you hear from your mom?
I had a missed call from her, 1 or 2 missed calls, and then she texted me, "Call us ASAP."
And why did you miss the calls? What were you doing?
I was in surgery.
Okay. After she texted you, call her ASAP, what did you do?
I stopped what I was doing. I could see the text messages on the phone as they come in, so I knew it was important. I stopped what I was doing, and I called her right back.
When you called her back, what did she tell you?
She told me that Wendy had just called her and that Dan had been shot and that it was serious and that her and my dad are going to be going up to Tallahassee to be with her.
How did you react?
I was shocked. I said, is he okay? Is he going to be okay? Are the boys okay? Or Wendy's okay? Like what happened?
And what did your mom tell you?
She said she didn't know any details, that it was really serious, and that Wendy's with the police right now and they're questioning her.
Now, after you got off the phone with your mom, what did you do?
I went back to work.
And did you have some communications with people after that through text messages about how you were feeling?
I did.
And generally speaking, how were you feeling?
I wasn't feeling great. I was pretty upset about what I just heard.
Now, around what time, if you remember, did you leave the office?
Probably about between 8:20 and 8:30.
Okay. And again, it's a pretty far drive, correct? Even
Yeah.
at that time of night.
Yeah, there's no traffic at that time, so I could speed a little bit. But
On your car ride home, did you make phone calls?
yes, I did.
And in particular, and we'll do it one at a time, did you speak with Catherine Magbanawa?
Yes, I did.
And what did you tell Catherine Magbanawa on your ride home?
I told her that my ex-brother-in-law had been shot, and it's serious. And I just told her I really didn't feel like going out tonight and just hang out at the house if you still want to come over. She said, "No, I'm still coming to see you."
But she was trying to meet with him already because she knew this was going to happen and was going to set up this extortion plot. So she needed to make sure that she was still going to see him, and that's why she came to his house. That's the defense's theory.
How did she seem?
It seemed normal. I mean, she seemed concerned, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Now, are you aware that after that phone call, Catherine Magbanawa had to frantically go around and try to get a babysitter for her kids?
No, not at all.
No. Did you speak with your mom on the way home to your house?
Yeah, I called my parents also from the car.
And what did you find out from your parents?
That they were getting ready to leave, and that they were heading up to they were going to head up to Tallahassee, and that they were going to probably stop up in Orlando because it's late and they wouldn't get up there till. So they're going to spend the night in Orlando and then go up to Tallahassee.
Now, you've seen text messages in this case where there's some indication your mom says outside your house, and 20 minutes later, after that text message, you say 10 minutes. Do you recall those text messages?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you see your parents that evening?
No, not at all.
When your mom says outside your house, does that mean to you that she was actually at your house?
No, it meant that she was passing by my house outside it on the vicinity, seeing if I was home.
On the phone call that you had with your mom on the way home, did you discuss anything about your parents stopping at your house?
Yeah, I said, text me when you're close. If I'm home, stop by and see me, because my house is a football field length away from the exit of the turnpike.
And When they were close, were you anywhere near your house?
No, and I missed their text. I didn't get home for 40 minutes after that text came through.
When you got home, what did you do?
When I got home, I changed, took a shower. I took a shower, changed, and I played phone tag with Katie to see where she was at. I think I talked to her after I got out of the shower, and she was going to be heading over to hang out with me.
I mean, that's a very plausible thing as far as the parents outside his house, but whatever. Little sticky note from his co-counsel.
You have a text with your friend Mike that said you went to the gym. Do you have a gym? Did you go to the gym?
No.
Do you know if you worked out in your house that night?
I don't know if I've got some workout equipment in the house, so I may very well have, but I didn't go to the gym that night.
Your friend Mike wanted to have dinner with you that night, right?
Why did he lie to Mike? That was weird. Why bring that? Why bring that up? Why bring that sticky note up? What am I missing there?
Yeah.
Now, when you get to the house, you said you called Katie after your shower. Why did you call her?
To see if she was still planning on coming over and what time she was going to be there, because it was already like 10:15.
And did she come to your house that night?
Yeah, she said she was going to be leaving shortly. And I think I even said either text me or call me when you're on your way.
Did she actually come to your house that evening?
Yes, she did.
Around what time did she arrive?
She got there about 11 o'clock.
What happened when she arrived?
When she arrived to my house, she came in through the garage, entered into the kitchen from the side door like she always does.
Here is the discussion. This is the defendant's entire case. This is their theory. Do we believe Charlie Adelson right now is when we all have to listen, because he's going to explain this conversation with Katie Magbanwa. Does it sound like her? Do we think she said it like this? Do we think she set it up? Is she the mastermind? This is the conversation again that the state never knew about or couldn't know about because nobody else ever told them about.
And she just looked panicked and upset. I mean, she walked straight in and gives me this big tight hug and asked me, like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just a horrible day." But she looked more upset than I've ever seen her. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "No."
She looked more upset than I did, I think is what he was going to say. I'm going to back it up so we can listen again, but he literally sounded like he's going to say, she looked more upset than I did.
More upset than I've ever seen her. And I said, "Yeah, just a horrible day." But she looked more upset than I've ever seen her. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Just come sit down. I need to talk to you."
Where did you go?
We walked into the living room.
And what happened when you got to the living room?
We sat down on the couch and she started to talk to me. And she said, "Listen, this is all my fault, but I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer."
What did you say?
I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "My friend killed Dan and he wants to be paid $1/3 $1 million."
How did you react?
I was like, "What did you just say?" And she's like, "My friend killed Dan and he wants you to pay $1/3 $1 million."
What happened next?
I stood up and I started cursing it. I'm like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?" And she's like, "No." I'm like, who did this? Who's your friend that did this?" And she's like, "I don't want to say. I can't say." And I said, who was it? And she just kept saying, "I'm not going to tell you." And I was like, was it Sigfredo? And she's like, "No, I'm not telling you." And I just walked in my bedroom and sat down on the edge of my bed.
What happened when you got in the bedroom?
She came into the bedroom, followed after me. She sat down next to me. She started telling me, like, "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault, but I didn't know any of this was going to happen." And I'm like, "Katie, I'm not going to be part of this shit. Like, I'm not going to be part of paying for a murder. This is insane." And she's like, "Look, if you don't pay in 48 hours, they will kill you." And I said, "Katie, I feel like I'm getting extorted now."
How did she respond to that?
You feel like you're getting extorted? It's like, no, you don't feel like you're getting extorted. This is the definition of extorted. I mean, I would have been like, "I'm losing my mind." I immediately called the cops, like Rebel Duck said. But I mean, this is a wild story, and he is telling it just so matter-of-factly. But again, it's all up to what the jury thinks and what the jury believes.
She got really mad at me. So she got angry, and she's like, "Look, I'm not extorting you." She's like, "I got dragged into this the same way you got dragged into this." She's like, "It's my fault for running my mouth the way I did, but I'm not extorting you. Like, I'm trying to help you." So she's like, she goes, "What are you going to do? You're going to go to the police?" She goes, "You go to the police, they'll kill you."
Did she tell you that they would just kill you? Or
If you go to the police, they'll kill you. It's like, I mean, that's theoretically true for everybody that goes to the police. That, I mean, if you're going to be involved in any murder investigation, you would fear for that. And some people I know don't talk to cops because of that, but a lot of people still do. And a lot of people did in this case and didn't end up getting killed.
or they would also kill other people?
She said, "He'd come after you. He'd come after the family. Like, Charlie, you don't have a choice. Just pay the money. You said you had the cash. You said you were going to pay a third. Like, just do it. Like, I'm trying to help you out."
What did you do then?
I said, "Kate, I don't have $1/3 in cash." And she's like, "You said you did." And I was like, "No, I cash isn't. I can write a check for $1/3. I don't need to take out a loan." And she's like, "Well, you have a ton of money in your safe." And I said, "Kate, I don't have that much in my safe. I do have a lot." And I said, "Come take a look." And I walked over to my safe. I opened it up. I'm like, "Here, take a look." I took it out in piles and put it on the dresser next to us. And I said, "Go ahead and count. That's not $1/3."
And did she count it?
Yes, she did.
How much money did she count?
138,000.
So it wasn't 100,000, it was 138,000.
Correct.
What did she do with $138,000?
She had a big purse. She put it in her purse. And she asked me, she goes, how can you get the rest? And I'm like, "Hey, that's all the cash I've saved up from forever." And she said, "Can you go to your parents and get it?" And I was like, "If I go to my parents, my dad will go to the cops in a second. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to stop my dad from going to the police. Like, I could never say anything to him."
What happened next?
She asked me, she said, "Well,
So his parents didn't know. He would never tell his dad because he would immediately call the cops, which a lot of people think this is what Charlie Adelson would have or should have done, but he didn't. He's got an answer for everything. There's nothing I don't know or I wasn't really thinking straight at the time. You know, I'm sure that's, if this was real, which it may be, if this was real, that's what I feel like. I'd be like, I honestly blacked out. I was like, take all the money I have. I don't know what to do. I can't go to my dad. I can't go to the cops. I don't want to involve anybody else. Being frantic. It just seems a little matter of fact to me.
can you pay like $3,000 a month?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that."
Now, at this point in time, did you have any idea that she was part of the extortion?
No. She kept saying it was all her fault and that she didn't know any of this was going to happen. And she was upset.
What did she do next?
She took her purse, her keys, and her phone, and she's like, "I'm going to go call my friend and see if this works for him. And I'm going to try to help you out." And she walked out of the house, and my bedroom was right next to the front door. She walked out of my bedroom outside of the front door and closed the door behind her.
When she went out of the house, what did you do?
I just paced around my house, and I remember sitting in the living room. I got a wood coffee table, and I was just sitting on the coffee table, just in shock, thinking, "What the fuck just happened?"
What happened when she came back in the house?
She came in the house, and she was being the good guy and telling me that she's going to look out after me, and she's so sorry this happened. It's the same thing she was saying beforehand, and that she was going to make sure that nobody pays me a visit. And she's like, "I spoke to him. You can pay $3,000 a month, or you can pay the rest off." She goes, "But the $3,000 a month you're paying doesn't go towards the balance."
What did you do after she told you that?
I just said fine, and I walked downstairs into the kitchen, and I was shaking, and I took a bar of Xanax,
Where did you go?
and I walked outside from the kitchen through the sliders into the backyard. I closed the sliding glass.
So you guys can help me out with this. I took a bar of Xanax. Do you call it a bar when you take it like for medication? Does everybody call it a bar, or is that just people that use it recreationally call it a bar? I don't really know like how that verbiage is necessarily used. But I agree. There's a lot of detail here, a lot of facts for such a high stress situation. Can you make payments really? We are going to repost the poll because it was about 50% of people in here thought he was doing good before he started telling the important stuff. Nicole, I think he's doing well, but if he wasn't doing well with his own team questioning, then I'd be really concerned. We'll see how he does on cross. Retired Nana, sorry, got in late. Didn't his mother allegedly provide the money? I mean, there's a lot of different stories about where the money came from, and it continued to come from different sources, but at least the first chunk came from him.
Door behind me. I think she got the picture. I wanted to be alone. And I just sat outside behind my house for a while.
Now, when you came back into the house,
What was she like?
She was just apologizing, and just telling me that her friend's crazy and she's so sorry, and she ran her mouth too much about everything and about the $1 million offer, and she was telling me that she was going to protect me.
Did she take a Xanax as well?
I don't know if she did. She may have, but I didn't give her one.
Did she spend the night that night?
She did sleep over there.
This would be my verbiage, Lisa, but I don't know. I've never taken a Xanax, a bar, pill, or otherwise, so I don't know. But it struck me as a little,
Now, why didn't you kick her?
And then she slept over his house that night after taking $138,000 to her friend. Wouldn't you demand more detail before you let somebody walk out of your house with $138,000 of cash you've been saving up for years? Wouldn't you at least say, I'm not giving you this cash till you tell me the person's name? I don't really care about any of the repercussions. I need to know their names. They're threatening to kill me. I'm not just going to forever give you all of my money, especially when we saw his text messages later about leeches and they're going to ask for more later. Like, you would have to get more detail than that. You'd have to confirm, first off, that she actually knows what she's talking about and actually was her friend. What did you do to corroborate her story? Or did you just say, okay, here's $138,000 to a newish girlfriend who I didn't see myself ever marrying? There's a lot of holes to be poked. That's the point. It's easy right now. But if I was going to cross him, I think this is a shreddable story.
Out.
I was in a state of shock, and I didn't think she had anything to do with it. I didn't even want to believe that she had anything to do with it.
When you came back in the house, what happened to you next?
The Xanax was really starting to set in. It's probably about a half hour I was outside. I remember going into the bedroom and sitting down. I sent a text to my parents to see if they were up in Orlando yet or where they were. And then I laid down in bed and I passed out pretty soon after that.
The next morning, when did she leave?
She left about 8:30 in the morning.
And how was she in the morning? How was she acting?
She was apologizing and telling me how sorry she is. And she was blaming herself and saying it's all my fault for running my mouth and telling my friend about this. And she was just telling me that she was going to protect me and that I wasn't going to get a visit from anybody.
What did she tell you anything in particular before she left the house?
Yeah, she told me, whatever you do, she said, please don't tell anybody about what happened. Like, don't tell anybody about this. Never talk about this. Never talk about it on the phone. She said, never call me up and start talking about this. And the last thing she said to me is like, can we just pretend like this never even happened?
She leaves the house, and we're going to get into specifics, but that day, July 19th, where do you go?
I don't leave the house. I was home all day.
What were you thinking and what were you doing when you were home on the 19th?
I was sleeping a bunch. I think I took probably some more Xanax, just trying to relax. And I was just real upset.
That morning, did you speak with your parents and with Wendy Adelson?
I did. I talked to my parents that morning.
And what did you find out?
I found out that Dan had died.
And why did you call Wendy Adelson?
Because that was the first call I called after my parents told me that, to see how she was, see how the boys were.
Now, you're home alone the entire day of the 19th. Did you think about going to the police?
I thought about it, but I thought I'm going to get killed if I go to the police. It's not going to bring Dan back. It just seemed like a bad idea.
Over the days following, did you continue to go back and forth about whether to go to the police or not?
Every time I thought about it, I thought through what could happen to me, what would be the benefit versus the pros versus the cons.
So the con is this person could do that to you, which they still could, even if you don't go to the police, number one. Number two, the pro is maybe the cops will stop them, or you could just keep paying them literally forever. Like in this situation where you really have no clue what's going on, I see more pros with going to the police than cons, but at least he answered the question again. One of the really important parts that you have to do if you're a criminal defendant taking the stand, you have to answer these questions. The obvious ones. Why did you not go to the police? David said a bar of Xanax is a street term for 2 milligram tablet of Xanax. I'm surprised that a dentist would use that term. Just struck me as a little odd too. Gavel Geeks, welcome.
And why didn't you go to the police?
I thought if I went to the police that they'd kill me.
It's so like,
Now,
boom, boom,
there are
boom,
some
reading a
text
script
messages into evidence on the 19th. Text messages between you and Catherine Magbanua. I think there's 3 of them. Do you recall those text messages?
Yeah, we texted during the day.
And they're text messages about the weather and pool and going and and Catherine McVanoa going to the pool. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
What are those text messages about?
I was trying to show her that I was trying to pretend like this didn't even happen. Like, I think one of the texts said I'm going to the gym. I didn't go to the gym that day. My phone will show I never left the house.
So, okay, how does he explain the nonchalant texts and calls and conversations? It's like, well, listen, I'm a really good listener. And she said, pretend like this never happened. So that's what I did. I just pretend like this never happened. It's like, come on. If you're a doctor, like a professional, and somebody's extorting you out of hundreds of thousands of dollars and just killed your ex-brother-in-law, the father of your nephews, you wouldn't be freaking out literally every single day? You just can pretend like everything's back to normal and like it never happened. I don't love that part of the story, in my opinion.
Now, you say that she said that you could pay it all at once, or you could pay $3,000 a month. That's what her friend would accept, right?
Yes.
Did you think about paying it all at once?
I thought about it. I thought, if I'll do it and it'll get these people out of my life forever. But then I thought, this is extortion. One thing I know about extortion is it never ends. So if I paid it all at once, I thought that may be more of a reason that they come kill me. Or if I pay it all off, they're going to come back and ask for more money.
In the days following the extortion, did your sleeping habits change?
Yes.
What did you start doing?
I slept with a gun in my nightstand ever since then. Then I started carrying my gun on me also.
Wasn't there part in his ex-girlfriend's testimony where the state was trying to get her to say that, but she wasn't really saying that, and the state was trying to impeach her with her own? I don't know, but the defense is obviously saying he's scared, he's being extorted, he thinks somebody's out there potentially that could hurt him or his family.
I'm showing you it's marked for identification purposes only as Defendant's Exhibit 51 and Defendant's Exhibit 52. Can I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Take a look at those. Do you recognize those items?
I do.
Judge, I would move Defendant's Exhibit 51 and 52. Well, before I move in 52, the 52 are some text messages. Are those text messages that you recognize that you kept in your ordinary course of dealings with text messages?
Yes, they are.
I would move in at this time 51 and 52.
Any objection from the state?
I have not reviewed these.
Please let Ms. Keppelman look at 51 and 52.
Yeah, that's important. Confirmed a lot of things. I would think.
Defense 51 and 52 are admitted at this time.
Now, on within 11 days after your extortion, did you do anything in particular to your house and to the Adelson Institute?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
A few days after it happened, I called up a camera guy, and I got a whole set of cameras installed in my house and in my office, like pointing out to the parking lot also.
Judge, may I public?
So again, this is plausible. This kind of is in line with what they're saying. Problem is, even if you hired a hitman who brought a gang member with him to do the job, you might want to get cameras anyways, right? Once the deed was done. Or, like a lot of people have said, the extortion could have happened after the deed was done. Keep paying.
Showing you it's marked as
you got a lot to
Defendant's
lose as a
Exhibit
dentist.
Is this a check for the cameras?
Yes, it is.
And how much did you pay for the camera system?
I paid $2,140.
And what date was the check made out for?
7/30/2014.
And in the memo line, what does it say?
It says camera.
I'm showing you some text messages.
Yeti Man, what they say is that Dan Markel posted it on some app and Facebook, his schedule all the time. That's the defense's theory there to answer this question, because they're trying to answer all the questions you guys have, you guys and the jury. They're trying to answer them all as best they can.
From a couple days earlier. And these are text messages between you and your parents and you and Camera Adriel. Who's Camera Adriel?
Adriel is the name of the guy who installed the cameras. So I just put his name in my phone as camera. So it's easy to look up. Camera Adriel.
And here are you indicating that you put cameras in your house as well as the Adelson Institute?
Yeah, that's why there's 2 DVRs. There was one for the house and there was one for the office, and it's 23 cameras in total.
Why did you think it was so important to put all of a sudden a camera system up?
It was I was worried about my safety. I fully expected these people to come back and possibly try to kill me. So I just wanted to beef up my security system in the house and the office.
He thought these people would come back? Come back or come get him?
Okay, I want to switch gears a teeny bit. What was your sister like in the weeks following the murder?
She was a wreck. I mean, she looked horrible. She didn't leave the house. She wasn't eating.
Before we go into that subject, I want to bring up one other thing about the cameras. Are there text messages earlier in the year where your parents are asking you to put up cameras at the Adelson Institute?
We talked about it, and I actually had a camera system at my house, but it was older, it was antiquated, and it didn't work really good. It was from like 2008, so the technology was 6-7 years old.
Those text messages earlier in the year to put up a camera system at the office, had you ever acted upon that?
No, we talked about it, but I never got around to it.
It's not until within a week or so after you're extorted that you act upon that, correct?
Yeah, I called the camera guy about 3 or 4 days after I got extorted, and then it took him like a week to get the cameras and to set up an appointment to install it.
So it all works out. Dennis says, makes no sense why the hitman would do this to the brother-in-law for no guarantee of money, then threaten to kill him if he doesn't pay or go to the police. Yeah, because all sorts of guys just want to start popping off people for no reason and no money and no chance. So they just pick random people and hope for the best because they want to, do this to a bunch of rich people or professionals that everybody would miss and be mad about and want to find whoever did this to. It makes no sense to take that risk as a hitman. And the state already answered this question with Luis Rivera on the stand. Like, wouldn't it have just been easier to rob the dentist if you thought he had 300 grand in cash in his safe? When I was at the state attorney's office in the gang unit, they say like 95+% of all robberies are when people know that there are guns or money in the house or drugs. So if they already knew the money was in the house, it was a lot easier to just rob him and they don't have to kill anybody and they don't have to take that ultimate risk of spending life in prison. So it really doesn't make sense from the hitman's perspective. Not that they're always logical or making good decisions.
Let me ask you another question. And we're going to get to your mom learning what happened. But before we get there, after you were extorted, did you tell anyone about what happened to you?
No, I told nobody.
Why not?
Katie told me before she left my house that morning, she's like, you cannot talk to anybody about this. Don't ever talk about this with anyone. Don't ever talk on the phone about it. Don't even talk to me about this ever again. Like, nobody can find out, but I'm going to protect you.
Does anybody seem like he seems like the type of guy that would just listen to what Katie Magbanua said and follow her lead and follow her instruction in potentially the most important time of his life? He asks his mom and his dad about everything else. He talks to his sister about all these other decisions. But for this, he's just going to listen to Katie Magbanua, fall in line, and follow her lead. That's what you have to believe the defense in this case.
Let's get back to Wendy.
Yeah.
So I think you said Wendy was a mess.
Yeah.
Did there come a time when you went out to dinner with your sister?
Yes.
And how long after the murder was that?
I'd say it was about 2 weeks after, maybe even a hair more, but around about 2 weeks.
And what happened when you went out to dinner with her?
I picked her up. I said, what do you feel like getting? You want to get pizza? You want to get sushi? And she's like, I love sushi. So I said, all right, I'll take you to I'll take you to a really good place for sushi.
Where did you go?
We went to a restaurant called Juvia. And it's actually a pretty fancy sushi place.
What happened during the dinner?
She got really sick. When we got to the restaurant, we didn't have a reservation or anything. They sat us at the bar. They served us a drink at the bar. And it was really short. It was one of those like martinis that have like 3 shots in them, so they're strong. And then we sat at the dinner table.
Were you drinking and celebrating the death of Professor Markel?
Absolutely not. We sat at the bar waiting for a table for an hour. And then when we sat at the table, we each had one drink.
Now, I want to move on to August. Well, before we get there, sorry. In July, did you break up with Catherine Magbanua?
Yes.
How did you break up with her?
This happened on a Friday night. I'd say within a week, I met her. I said, "Come, let's have dinner," and we went out for tacos. And I said, like, "We can't do this anymore. I don't want to be in a relationship with you."
How did she react?
I think she knew it was coming. I mean, there was no surprise on her part.
Now, in August, did you see her?
I saw her one time in August.
Why did you see her in August?
I saw her one time in August to pay her $3,000 for her friend.
When you paid her the money in August, how did you pay her?
I paid her $3,000 in cash.
And at this point in time, did you know that she was actually part of the extortion?
No, I thought she was. I thought she was not part of it. I was a little suspicious, but she just kept telling me that how sorry she was, and she was adamant that she had nothing to do with it and didn't know this was going to happen.
When you gave her the cash in August, did she make any request of you?
Yes, she did.
What request did she make?
She said, "Look, none of this money's going to her. She's giving all the money to her friend." She said, "Can you do me a favor? I need to get health insurance for my kids. Like, I'm helping you out. Nobody's going to ever pay you a visit. Can you give me $2,000 in cash for my friend and write me a check for $1,000 every month?" And that way, she said she'll cash it, give the money to her friend, and then that way she can get health insurance for her kids.
Okay, so let's.
So he didn't know she was part of the extortion, but she was specifically asking for money for herself and her kids because she was protecting him and nobody was ever going to pay him a visit. That's weird. That's an interesting twist I wasn't expecting. So we break up, okay, but can you still keep giving me money for insurance for my friend? That's interesting. I guess he's trying to explain away the good relationship they had even after they broke up. I don't know.
Break that down a little bit. She says to you she needs health insurance for her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to you, I'm getting none of the money at all.
Yeah, she said none of this is going to her.
But it would really help me if $1,000 of the $3,000 can be in the form of being on the books of your business, essentially. Yes. And did you say to her, Catherine, we just did a murder. I can't put you on the books of the business because that creates a paper trail.
No, we didn't just do a murder. I just got extorted.
Now,
and again, that would be stupid. So again, I think that's a plausible argument. I know a lot of you are totally disagreeing with me saying not plausible at all. Certain parts of this are plausible to me. Other parts, not at all. And that's the problem when you give yourself a burden here as the defendant. Now you've kind of got to prove that it's true. And if it's not, I'm going to just kind of think you're lying. And if I think you're lying, that makes it easier for the state to get to their burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. Because you're not just poking holes, you're telling a completely different story that I'm going to look to you to prove. And you can't say you have no burden of proof and then tell me you're proving a story. And that's kind of what's happening here. And to me, that's plausible. It'd be really stupid to put her on the books if this was a whole conspiracy that you guys did together. But a lot of things they did in this entire process were really stupid.
what did you say to her when she made you that request?
I said, I'll do it for you. No problem. I mean, I wanted to keep her happy.
Now, before you did that for her, what did you have to do?
I had to call my mom because she does the books at the office. I don't even have the checkbook. And I called her up and I said, I want to put Katie on payroll at the office for $1,000 a month.
When you called your mom, what did she say to you?
She said, was Katie going to be coming into the office? She's going to start working for us. And I said, no, she's not. And she's like, well, what's Katie going to be doing? And I go, oh, she's just going to be helping me out with some stuff and different things. It's a long story. And I think my mom was someplace when I was talking to her on her cell phone because she didn't question me much after that.
Did you make any special requests to your mom about how the checks would be made?
Yes, I did.
What was your request to your mom?
I said, put them as like, give me like 4 or 5 checks at a time because I just want to hand them to her like that. So I said, write me a bundle of checks at a time.
Why did you?
Some stuttering there because Again, doesn't make a lot of sense, kind of weird, but it is what it is.
You want your mom to give you a bundle of checks at a time.
Because I only planned on seeing her one time a month, and that was to make the extortion payment. So I figured if I gave her 4 or 5 checks each time, that's all I planned on seeing her.
Now, sometimes did you give her less than 4 or 5 checks at a time?
Not that I can recall.
Now, did there come a time when you went to go pick up the checks from your mom?
Yes,
And where did you go to pick up the checks?
I went to my parents' apartment.
And who was there when you came to pick up the checks?
My mom was there, and I don't think my dad was there at the time. He wasn't there at that time.
Was he there or
No,
wasn't he?
she was alone. There was no one else there.
Now, when you went to go pick up the checks, what happened and what do you remember?
I remember walking in and saying hi to my mom, and she's like, "Oh, the checks are over there on the counter like you asked for." And I saw there was a white envelope and there was a stack of checks sitting there. And she said, what's Katie doing for you? And I thought we'd already addressed it, but she's working at the office. And I'm like, no, I told you she's not. She's like, well, $1,000 a month is a lot of money to pay somebody. And she's like, what exactly is she doing for you? And I said, it's a long story. And then she said, well, I'm your mom. Like, tell me. Like, don't just tell me it's a long story. So this time she was like, and I was face to face with her, and she was more persistent in asking me, what the heck's going on? Are you still dating her? And I'm like, no, we're definitely not dating anymore. She's like, well, why are you giving her $1,000 a month? This makes no sense.
What happened next?
I told my mom, I wanted to tell somebody because if I get killed, at least somebody will know where to look or what it could have been about. So I wanted my mom to know what happened, but I also didn't want her saying anything to anybody. So I told my mom, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something, but I never want to talk about it again. I never want you to talk to me about it on the phone. Don't talk about it anywhere. And
So he's willing to put his mom's life in danger now to tell her, as long as she promises not to tell anybody, but he's not willing to talk to a cop confidentially or anything like that. You can get alone in a room with a cop. There's ways to do that, to tell them what's going on so they can help you out and people wouldn't know about it, just like they wouldn't know about this conversation with his mom. But he does talk to his mom. He does get his mom involved. At this point, he's purely protecting his mom, shielding her. She didn't know anything was going on, even while the extortion was happening. And then he told her later on in the story.
please, whatever you do, do not say anything to Dad. Do not say anything to Wendy. Do not try to make me go to the police because I'm not going. You got to promise me all that, and then I'll tell you.
And what did you tell your mom?
I told her that the night of the 18th, I got extorted for $250,000.
How did your mom react?
She flipped out. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Like, what is this about? Like, you know who killed Dan?
What did she want to do?
She wanted to go to the police.
And what did you tell her?
I said, absolutely not. I said, it's not going to bring Dan back. Like, you're just going to end up getting me killed, or they'll come after somebody in the family.
So if his parents ever get indicted, are they going to go with this same story, or are they going to change it? Is he going to admit he lied to try to help them? I don't even know what's going to, it's just, this web is crazy. And a lot of people said Magbanua was just lying the whole time in both of her trials. And of course she swore she wasn't. She even appealed it. Then she comes in this trial and is basically like, yeah, I was lying. Here's the truth. And I gotta be honest. I think that could have a profound effect on the jury, that a criminal defendant, when their life is on the line, they will do whatever they can do when sitting in that chair and they take the stand and they testify. And if the state wants to say Adelson lied, which they're basically going to have to say Charlie Adelson lied, just like Magbanua lied during her trial. Now, that could be towing the line of impropriety. Maybe they don't want to do that for appellate issues, but to act like somebody can't get up there and lie, we know that's not true. Catherine Magbanua came up and admitted she lied when she took the stand.
What was agreed upon between you and your mom that evening?
That she was never going to say anything to anybody.
How about to your dad?
That not my dad, not my sister.
Why were you so persistent with your mom that she couldn't tell your dad or your sister?
Because I thought they'd go to the police. I didn't think there'd be any way to stop them. These people told me that. I mean, I was told the night of the extortion, you got 48 hours to pay up or you're going to get killed. These people were not messing around.
Now, your mom gives you the checks, the first set of checks
Yes.
that day?
Yes.
And do you remember what month that was?
That was in September.
After she gave you those checks, would you periodically have to meet with your mom and get more checks?
Yeah, but not. I didn't even realize the staff got paid biweekly, so they got their checks every 2 weeks. So when I'd asked her for 4 or 5 checks, I was thinking like that would be good for the month. I didn't realize that was going to be like, 8-10 weeks.
Did your mom bring this subject up again?
She would ask me, "Are you okay?" She asked me, "Do you need anything?" She asked me, "Do you need money?" I'm like, "No, I don't want you guys getting involved. It's bad enough that I'm involved in this."
For the next 20 months, what did you do with regards to money and Catherine Magbanua?
Every single month, when I met her, I gave her $2,000 and the stack of checks for to carry her forward.
And again, what did you think she was doing with those checks?
I thought she was cashing the checks and giving the $3,000 to her friend.
Now, we've heard a lot about gifts. We've heard about Lexus with 160,000 miles. We've heard about plane tickets. We've heard about, I guess, breast augmentation, but let's put that aside because I think that's a different category. We've heard about a whole host of gifts regarding over the next 20 months, you giving a bunch of gifts to Catherine Magbanua. You recall that testimony in this courtroom?
Yes, I do.
The gifts that you gave to Catherine Magbanua, was that part of the extortion? Were those extortion payments?
No, not at all.
What were the gifts?
The gifts were me trying to keep Katie happy. And I didn't think Katie was any part of this extortion at all because she was constantly broke. I mean, she'd be hitting me up for $300. I mean, there's no way that she was getting that $3,000 and then asking me for $300 or running short on this or running short on that or can't pay a car bill.
So I want to make sure that we're crystal clear here. The fact that she was always saying she was broke, did that make you more certain or less certain that she was not part of the extortion?
It made me more certain that there's no way that she's involved. I mean, she's telling the truth. The extortion never went up. I mean, she could have just raised the extortion payment instead of having to ask me for money. Every time she was asking me for money, I actually felt good. I felt like she wasn't part of it.
You have one moment, Your Honor.
Take your time.
So, Annie, I don't think he implicated the mom. I think he's just basically saying his mom was caught in the same web that he was, but he said, stay out of it. I'm going to handle it myself. So she really wasn't, but she knew about it. That's I think, what he's trying to do with that story. KO, Uhtred, can't it be unaliving and extortion? Yes. A lot of people have said that, and that could absolutely be the case.
56 and 57. December 2nd, 2014.
Yes, it is.
And is one of them from November 25, 2015?
Yes, it is.
Are these text messages, do you recognize them as being kept in your ordinary course of business?
Yeah, there was text messages from my phone.
Judge, I would move in these exhibits at this point in time.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are admitted at this time. Defense 56 and 57, I believe.
Yes. May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
The first message is from December 2nd, 2014, Defendant's Exhibit 56. And Katie is, oh, wait.
Just wait for it to repost it.
Go ahead. Do it a different way. I have to make everyone sit. Do you recall her asking for a favor that she needs to borrow from you in December of 2014?
Yes.
Do you recall in November of 2015, she's talking about how she's embarrassed because her credit card was declined?
That old lady said, yeah.
Now, as time went on, let me back up. After the extortion, you break up with her
Yes.
and you see her only once a month or so.
It was once a month, except for the occasion of maybe there's one other time, 1 or 2 times.
Now, your communications with her in August and September, and maybe the first part to most of October of 14, through text messaging, do they dwindle, stay the same, or go up?
No, I was trying to have limited contact with her.
And as time goes on, however, what happens to your relationship?
I become more sure that she's not part of the extortion at all. And it really would what I was going by is how broke she was. There's no way she got all this money and she's so broke and she's still working. And we became friendly again. Our relationship was very different, but it was different but stronger because I needed her for my safety.
Okay. And so you've seen some of the emails, and I'm sure the state will show you a bunch of these emails in cross-examination where it's clear in the emails that you're learning a lot about each other. You're texting each other somewhat. You're talking as if you're friends.
We were friends. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend anymore. That ended, but she was protecting me.
They're trying to get him to answer the ultimate questions that they believe the jury is going to have. If she was in on this, why were you talking to her like this? Why were you guys still friends? And he's got to answer the best he can.
Now, during this entire period of time before the bump, we're not at the bump yet. During this entire period of time, did she ever tell you who was extorting you?
No.
Did you have a pretty good idea of who it was, though?
I did. I absolutely did.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Which is SX130, where your mom and you are showing your love for Wendy's boyfriend, who she doesn't love, Dave. Do you recall that?
Dave, yeah.
Was your mom involved in Wendy's life?
Yeah, she was involved, but I mean, she cared a lot about her. I mean, she's her mom.
Now, during that call, you talk about how Professor Markel's death was a tragedy. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Did you have any idea at that point in time that you were being listened to by the police?
No idea. I was driving home and I was in the car for a long time, so I was just talking to my mom about everything.
Now, during that call, there is some discussion about Wendy winning the lottery. If you look at the context of the call in its entirety, what are you referring to?
I'm referring to meeting Dave. Dave was a one-of-a-kind guy that I liked him a lot. I guess I liked him more than my sister did. But he was a great catch. He was super successful. He used to work for a government agency, sold his company for a tremendous amount of money. But most importantly, like, he really loved my sister. He really loved my nephews who don't have a dad anymore. And I mean, even on that call, I was talking about like a 6-year-old farting on his head. I was over there, and the kid was farting on his head, and he laughed, and it didn't bother him. So I thought he was a great guy. He actually even met the Markells, Dan's parents, once with my sister when they were visiting the boys. I mean, he was just a great guy, and it was my sister's birthday. That's why there was so much chatter caught about Dave, because I don't think she was inviting him or something. So that's why he became a topic of conversation. And The Wire was from April, and my sister's birthday's in April. So those are probably the most amount of Dave calls I've ever had in my life. But the FBI captured a bunch of Dave calls.
By the way, I saw you get a little emotional there. Do you love your nephews?
Of course.
So I am not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the lawyer feeling like he has to point out the fact that the defendant got emotional. So I see you got a little emotional there. Do you care about your nephews? It's like making sure the jury saw you got emotional there.
Would you ever take their
He's already talked about Dan dying like 5 times through cross. Hasn't gotten emotional, but he wants to point it out now.
father away from them?
No, never. Never in a million years.
Judge, may we approach this briefly?
You may.
Now, I'm wondering if the defense attorney now is going to say, should we break for lunch? Because it's 11:56. Like, should we break for lunch? Come back later. I have this line of questioning. Do you want to break late for lunch today? How do you want to handle this? Got a little time.
Point since jury select.
All right, here we go.
Members of the jury, we're going to take our lunch break at this point this morning. Once again, you're going to receive the same instruction that you've gotten since jury selection. Do not discuss the case with each other or anyone else. Do not seek out any news coverage or any information pertaining to the case. We will resume with the testimony of Mr. Adelson at 1:30. Please report back by 1:20.
All right. Doesn't look like
And,
anything else. Oh, wait.
I am.
Affected calls.
I'm not planning on playing all calls. I am planning on going through a lot of calls, but not playing them all. And we probably will be adding, I think, 1 or 2 calls as well.
Very well. Do you intend to finish with your direct by at least the mid-afternoon?
How long was I up there right now?
Let's say it took the morning.
I have no idea, Your Honor. I anticipate this could go all day. But maybe it'll go, it's
Wow.
going a little quicker than I had anticipated, to be honest with you. I know that's surprising. But I would think that it's gonna go at least another, it'll be a while. It may leak into tomorrow.
All right. Unless either party has anything further to raise, we'll be in recess. Please report back at 1:20.
So we just got a little information there that, in fact, this direct is not even halfway over. It seemed like they were kind of getting close to the end there. We're about to talk about the bump. But then I guess they're going to go through all these conversations. I did not think that they were going to play all those conversations. And they're going to add another call. So they're really going to have Charlie Adelson up on the stand explaining call after call. What did you mean here? What did you say here? Why did you say this? Why did you call this person? Was this a joke or was this serious? Wow. That is really, really surprising for me. So it seems like cross-examination is not going to start until tomorrow. And if that's the case, it would be smart for the defense attorney to keep him up on the stand the whole day and not finish until tomorrow morning. You don't want to end with some real bangers on cross-examination. That's not how you want to end a day. You'd probably rather come back, do an hour in the morning, and then let her start her cross-examination. So Adelson is going to be up on the stand for potentially 2 full days. Wow. So overall, the thoughts here are Charlie Adelson did a really good job, I think. I'll just give you my perspective, okay? From a lawyer's perspective, we've prepped clients. They're really nervous. It's really difficult for them to go through this. This is not easy. Charlie Adelson did a really good job going through his background, humanizing himself, making him not seem like a rich trust fund baby who just pays all of his problems away. And he did a good job of talking about how he's hardworking, loved his family, not too much, just enough. And then getting into the background of how he met Kate, what their relationship was like. And at that point, about 50% of the chat thought he was doing a good job. Let me see. John sent me kind of like the real-time results. So 50%, 48% of you thought he was doing a good job at that point. Only 13% thought he was doing a bad job. And 40% felt like you were unsure. Okay? And then, with about the same amount of votes, when he started getting into the story, the extortion, what happened, what he did, then it flipped to 18% good, 47% bad, 35% unsure. So a major flip from good and bad, from 50% good to 50% bad. But then, as time continued and more of the chat voted, it ended up being 21% good, 38% bad, and 41% unsure. Now, to me, if we compare this to Alec Murdoch testifying or anything Darrell Brooks did, I think it's a lot better. It's a lot better. Now, it's not as overwhelmingly positive as I think most people watching like the Rittenhouse case, where a lot of people thought he did such a great job on the stand, even with, the crying stuff. But to me, I actually think Charlie Adelson came across about as good as he could through this testimony. All right. I need to do a lot of work now. I have pushed most of my work to this afternoon. I will try to either pop on again this afternoon or do a recap of this afternoon at some point to give you guys what my thoughts are for the afternoon. I'm definitely going to be talking about the cross. If it happens at a time I can go live, I will go live. Thank you guys for coming. If I do go live, later this afternoon or for cross. I hope you guys come. I hope you guys come hang out because I've really enjoyed watching it live with you, even though it's much slower than when I watch it on my own on 2 times speed or 1.5 times speed. But I am really interested in seeing cross-examination. I'm really interested in seeing how he continues to navigate the waters and explain this stuff. Hit that like button if you haven't already, and please subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so that if we do randomly go live again during cross-examination, during direct, whenever it may be when he's on the stand, you don't miss the YouTube alert. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you so much. I'll be back. We will continue to talk about this case, but for now I've got to eat and I've got to work. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who might be interested here on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, at Lawyer You Know. But on Instagram, we are still at Tragos Law. So look us up on there. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. Of course, all of these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.